Chapter 397. After listening for a long time, Su Yusin finally got some idea of what was going on. Of course, he knew that his father had a sweetheart. But he didn't expect that sweetheart to come back. Old Master Li was tired at this point and didn't want to stay any longer. He stood up. Qinghui, a person's time in this life is actually very limited. I really hope that you know what you want and what's most important. Su Qinghui was silent. Of course, he knew that the most important thing in his life was revenge. Other than revenge, nothing else was important. Yes, that's right. He didn't regret it. Not at all. Li Qianxue looked in the direction of her daughter's departure and watched as old Master Li returned to his room. She finally looked at Su Qinghui. Her eyes were a little cold. She didn't care that her father was still here. Her voice was full of exhaustion. Su Qinghui, if you feel that your resentment hasn't dissipated, you still want to vent your anger, then come at me. Peijin and Yusin are also your children. If you feel that you want to be with a woman now, you can mention divorce. Not only will I agree, but I can also guarantee that everything you have obtained with your ability will still be yours. But I don't want what happened today to happen again. You know, I'm protective. I can tolerate anything else. But I won't watch you bully my children. After saying this, Li Qianxue didn't look at Su Qinghui. She got up and went upstairs to comfort Su Peijin. Dad. Su Qinghui didn't speak. He sat there without moving. After so many years, he realized that it was the first time he heard the word divorce from Li Qianxue's mouth. In the past, no matter what he said or did, Li Qianxue never said these two words. So as long as Xiang Kaiping came back, she was willing to divorce. Then what about the past 20 years? Dad? Su Yusin called again. Su Qinghui raised his head as if he had just noticed Su Yusin. You're back. Yes. He didn't say that he had come back long ago. Su Yusin thought about it and still wanted to ask more clearly. Dad, what happened to sister? What did she do? Don't you love her the most? Su Qinghui didn't speak and looked at Su Yusin. Only then did he realize that his son seemed to have grown a little taller in just half a month. This was his son, the son he had with Li Qianxue. Just like Su Qingsang, this child didn't receive all the love and care that Su Peijin did. However, this did not affect his excellence. He was number one in every subject. First in the class, first in the whole year. He also has a good personality. It was not like Su Peijin, but more like Su Qingsang. Was this really a blood relationship? Dad? Su Yusin realized that Su Qinghui was distracted again, so he couldn't ask any more questions. He remembered that his grandfather had told him that he was going to look for Hu Jinyao later. Perhaps he should go with him tomorrow. Su Qingsang didn't know that the Su family was having a huge argument at home. Xiang Kaiping slept for the whole day and was much more energetic at night. Although he still couldn't get up, at least his face wasn't as pale as before. Su Qingsang realized that Hu Jinyao was really good at finding people after Ning Xiaomei stayed behind. Not only was she strong, but she was also very chatty. She knew Lin City very well. She even knew some of the places that had been developed in the past. She only stayed to chat with Xiang Kaiping for a while, but Xiang Kaiping was very satisfied. When Hu Jinyao came to the ward after work, Su Qingsang gave him a sincere smile of gratitude. Jinyao, you're here. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hu Jinyao with satisfaction and heartache in her eyes. You're busy at work, so you don't have to come at night. Qingsang and Xiao Ning are still here. Mom. I came to see you. Hu Jinyao stood by the bed. It's good that you're awake. If you didn't wake up, I was afraid that the ward would be drowned by some people's tears. Hui Jinyao, what are you talking about? Su Qingsang glared at him. I didn't cry. Did I mention names? Hui Jinyao raised his eyebrows and looked innocent. I didn't say it was you. Why are you in such a hurry to admit it? You. Su Qingsang turned to look at Xiang Kaiping. Mom, don't believe him. Xiang Kaiping smiled and held Su Qingsang's hand. I don't believe him. I believe you. Su Qingsang blinked at Hui Jinyao. See? I'm my mother's biological daughter. Mom. You have to do something about this. Hui Jinyao looked melancholy. Your daughter is looking down on me, her husband, more and more. She didn't care about you in the first place. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hui Jinyao's pale face and added, she cares about you. Su Qingsang blushed. She really didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to say that. However, Hui Jinyao smiled with satisfaction. He looked at Su Qingsang with doting eyes. The current situation made Xiang Kaiping want to live more and more. She wanted her body to recover as soon as possible so that she could move freely and take care of her daughter and grandchild. The atmosphere in the ward suddenly became livelier and happier because of Hui Jinyao's arrival. Hui Jinyao also breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that Xiang Kaiping was awake. After chatting with Xiang Kaiping for a while, Hui Jinyao left Xiaoning to take care of her and took Su Qingsang home to put away their luggage and clothes. Xiang Kaiping asked her to go home and rest. You stay up like this every night. Even if your body can take it, my heart will ache. You should go home and rest. Come back tomorrow morning. Su Qingsang couldn't argue with the two of them, so she went home. She woke up early the next morning, found a light porridge on the internet, and sent it to the hospital. Hui Jinyao sent Su Qingsang to the hospital first and then went to the company. If he wanted to go back to Rong City to develop, he would have to let others participate in many businesses in Lin City. He was actually very busy. He didn't expect to see someone waiting for him when he entered the company. Old Masterly. Hui Jinyao looked at Old Masterly, who was sitting on the sofa in his office. Not only him, but Su Yusin was also there. Su Yusin was clever. When he saw him, he stood up and called him brother-in-law. Hui Jinyao responded and looked at Yang Wencheng behind him. Inform them that the meeting will be postponed for half an hour. Yes. The door closed. Hui Jinyao walked to the other side of the sofa and sat down. Old Masterly, you could have called me if you needed anything. Why did you come here yourself? He glanced at Su Yusin. Yusin, too. Your grandfather is old. Why don't you persuade him? It's not worth it. Old Masterly looked at the polite expression on his face. I am old, but my old arms and legs can still move. That's true. Old Masterly is old but strong. Who would dare to say that you are old? Chapter 398. Hui Jinyao pursed his lips into a straight line. He was not in a hurry to respond to the other party's words. Old Master, you're being too modest. I already said, if you need anything, just let me know. I don't deserve the word beg. Old Masterly looked at Hui Jinyao with his shrewd eyes. Jinyao, you are my grandson-in-law. If you say so, I'll take it seriously. Don't. Hui Jinyao raised his hand. I'm not that lucky to be your grandson-in-law. These words were interesting. That meant that she didn't acknowledge Su Qingsang as Old Masterly's granddaughter. Old Masterly didn't look too good. Not only him, but Su Yusin also frowned. Jinyao, it's not up to you to decide. Old Masterly chuckled. No matter what, Qingsang's surname is Su. That's right. Her surname is Su, not Li. Hua Jinyao's expression was calm, but it was enough to make people angry. Old Masterly didn't know what to say. Yes. Her surname was Su. Of course, he's a member of the Su family. And then Hua Jinyao looked up, his deep eyes sharp. The sharp side of him that he had never shown in front of Su Qingsang was now showing to outsiders. What do you want to say? Just say it. You already said that we are a family, so don't stand on ceremony. Old Masterly did not relax because of Hua Jinyao's words. He could tell that Hua Jinyao was not easy to deal with. It's nothing. Just a small matter. Old Masterly thought of Su Peijian and felt a little upset. Su Peijian wasn't a bad child, but she was too arrogant. She could only blame herself for spoiling her too much. As a result, Su Peijian had developed such a condescending personality. He was responsible. However, he didn't want Su Peijian to be severely punished. Jinyao. We all know about Qingsang's mother's car accident a few days ago. Hua Jinyao didn't speak. He had guessed old Master Li's intention when he came today. Speaking of which, it is indeed our fault for not teaching our daughter well. We are also responsible. Old Master Li reflected on his actions and blamed himself. Seeing that Hua Jinyao remained unmoved, he sighed in his heart. No wonder Tianyu had been developing better and better these years. How many young people could be like Hua Jinyao? Jinyao, no matter what, we're all family. Since Qingsang's mother is fine, why don't we just forget about it? Forget it. Hua Jinyao seemed to have heard a joke. He tilted his head and looked at Old Master Li playfully. Old Master. I've always respected you. But there are some things I'm afraid I can't agree to. Jinyao, Chenghui has already taught Peijian a lesson about this. He also said that he would send Peijian to the United States so that she could calm down abroad. To the United States. Hua Jinyao smiled. That's a vacation, right? I don't think sending her away is a punishment. Jinyao. Old Master Li couldn't take it anymore. Peijian's father wants her to study abroad for a period of time. Do you still think it's a vacation? Then she's avoiding responsibility. Hua Jinyao nodded as if he suddenly understood. Yes. It turns out that in this day and age, people who do something wrong are punished as long as they are sent abroad. I've really learned something new. These words were really too unpleasant to hear. Old Master Li couldn't bear it anymore. Then what do you want? Speaking of this, Peijian is responsible for this, but she didn't do anything. She didn't want this to happen. She didn't do anything. Then I want to ask. Why is instigating murder punishable? Hua Jinyao, you're not helping to solve the problem at all. Because you don't have the attitude to solve the problem. Hua Jinyao's expression turned cold. He stared at Old Master Li. She should be punished for doing something wrong. What makes you think that Su Peijian can stay out of this? Brother-in-law. My sister didn't. Shut up. Hua Jinyao glared at him. Su Yusin, don't forget that Su Qingsang is also your sister. Su Yusin didn't say anything. He lowered his head and looked at his toes. He looked a little depressed. I know, but my sister, Su Peijian, really knows that she was wrong. She knows that she was wrong. Go to prison and admit your mistake. Hua Jinyao, don't go too far. Old Master Li couldn't bear to listen anymore. This was an accident. Peijian didn't do this. She also blames herself for this result and regrets it. Can't you? I can't. Hua Jinyao's expression was firm and his eyes were cold. Just like your bottom line is your family, my bottom line is also my family. Although Xiang Kaiping was not Hua Jinyao's direct family member, she was now Hua Jinyao's mother-in-law, so she was his family. Su Peijian dared to offend Xiang Kaiping, so she had to pay the price. The atmosphere was tense for a moment. Old Master Li took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. It was really difficult to stay calm like this. Hua Jinyao, then what do you want? Hua Jinyao didn't speak. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the two people in front of him. Old Master Li, you may not know one thing. What? This is not the first time Su Peijian has gotten into trouble. What? Not only Old Master Li, but even Su Yusin's eyes widened. Hua Jinyao thought for a moment and told them about the husband of the pregnant woman who jumped off the building last time. He didn't add fuel to the fire, and there was no need. After a few words, he looked at Old Master Li. You know now, right? This is not the first time Su Peijian has targeted Qing Sang, nor did she do anything bad. In fact, I gave her a chance. I also told Dad to keep an eye on Su Peijian. What did Dad say to me at that time? He said that he promised that nothing like this would happen again. However, it seems that not long after he promised, something like this happened again. Do you think I will let it go just like that? Old Master Li and Su Yusin didn't know about this. It was the first time they heard about it today. They looked at each other and stared at Hua Jinyao with their eyes wide open. They almost couldn't believe that Su Peijian was like this. This may be a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Hua Jinyao nodded. I'm sorry. I still have evidence that she instigated Lu Xiangyu's husband to hit Qing Sang last time. Hua Jinyao never fought a battle he was not confident of winning. Since he had made up his mind, he naturally had to make a fatal move. Old Master Li was speechless. He really didn't expect Su Peijian to make a mistake for the second time. After all, he had watched Su Peijian grow up. Chapter 399. Brother-in-law, what do you want now? Compared with Old Master Li's shock, Su Yusin was much calmer. Do you want my sister to apologize to Sister Qingsang's mother? Su Peijian wouldn't be able to take it if Su Peijian lost face like this. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Yusin with admiration. Su Yusin was so calm at such a young age. He would be a great man in the future. It was a pity that such a good boy was Su Peijian's younger brother. What a waste. Su Peijian already apologized last time, but it didn't work. So I don't need her to apologize. Hua Jinyao looked at Old Master Li and Su Yusin's faces and added, I want her to go to jail. Hua Jinyao. Old Master Li's voice was trembling. She will turn herself in and say that she encouraged Lu Xiangyu's husband to hurt Qing Sang. I've asked. This kind of crime won't last long. She'll be out in about 3 months. Hua Jinyao. Old Master Li's face turned green. Li Yongfeng's granddaughter was going to jail. Brother-in-law. Su Yusin also felt that the punishment was too much. Hua Jinyao said in a tone that was not negotiable, 3 months is my bottom line. As long as Su Peijian turns herself in, I promise that I won't do anything but lock her up for 3 months. He didn't finish his words, but the meaning was clear. If Su Peijian didn't turn herself in and stay in jail for 3 months, then Hua Jinyao would do it himself. Old Master Li and Su Yusin didn't expect Hua Jinyao to be so cruel. They looked at each other and wanted to say something, but they knew it was useless to say anything at this time. Hua Jinyao didn't stand on ceremony. After saying what he wanted, he picked up the documents and went to the meeting. Before he left, he didn't forget to annoy them. Old Master Li. What about me? My patience is limited. So Su Peijian had better turn herself in as soon as possible. Otherwise, I can't guarantee how long she will be locked up if I come forward to sue her. Old Master Li's face turned from green to white and then from white to green. He looked lethargic with an emaciated face. Su Yusin looked at Hua Jiniao's closed office door, thought for a moment, and helped Old Master Li up. Shall we go? Leave? Old Master Li didn't expect to be so embarrassed. How? Are you going to let your sister go to jail? But it's useless even if you beg him now. Although Su Yusin hadn't interacted much with Hua Jiniao, he could tell that Hua Jiniao wasn't someone who would easily change his mind. Are you going to watch your sister go to jail? If that really happened, the Li family and the Su family would become the laughingstock of Lin City. Su Yusin glanced at Old Master Li. Grandpa, why are you so obsessed? As you can see by now, it's useless to go to Hua Jiniao. Meeting Old Master Li's puzzled gaze, Su Yusin added, if you really don't want sister to go to jail, I'm afraid you'll have to look for Sister Qingsang. Old Master Li was stunned for a moment. He looked at Su Yusin and suddenly understood. Su Qingsang brought the porridge to Xiang Kaiping. In fact, she couldn't drink much at the moment. After drinking half a bowl, he said he couldn't drink anymore. Xiao Ning cleverly cleaned up the bowl, and Su Qingsang chatted with Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping had recovered quite well that day. Seeing that Su Qingsang had been with her the whole time and had been busy, she felt really bad. Why did she feel that she hadn't helped her daughter much since she adopted her? Instead, it was her daughter who had been worrying about her. Qingsang. Talk to the leaders of your institute. You can go to work tomorrow. Mom. Don't you like me to accompany you? I like it. But. Xiang Caiping's face was pale. But it's too much of a waste of your time. It's okay, Mom. I've already told the leader. I'll accompany you for the next few days. We'll talk about going to work in a few days. Although the critical period had passed, Xiang Kaiping was still very weak. Su Qingsang wanted to stay with her for a few more days. Okay then. Su Qingsang wanted to say something else, but her phone suddenly rang. Su Qingsang didn't expect the person to be Su Yusin. Not only Su Yusin, but Old Master Li was also there. When she saw Su Yusin in the corridor outside the hospital, she couldn't hide the surprise on her face. Yusin. She saw Su Yusin first, then Old Master Li. Old Master Li looked at Su Qingsang. No matter how biased he was, he had to admit that Su Qingsang was much more sensible than Su Peijian. Su Peijian didn't seem like an older sister, but more like a younger sister. Yusin, why are you here? Su Qingsang thought about the gift on the dressing table at home. She hadn't given Su Yusin the gift on the dressing table. Sister, this is a gift for Auntie. Su Yusin was carrying some high-end nutrition and tonics in his hand. They didn't look cheap. Su Qingsang wasn't in a hurry to take them. Instead, she looked at Old Master Li. Sister, you know that it's not convenient for us to go in. Why don't you bring them in? Thank you. Su Qingsang didn't refuse the gift. She took the gift box from the man's hand. Thank you. She didn't rush to go in. Instead, she looked at Su Yusin and said, you still have something to talk to me about, right? Although she didn't know what it was, she could more or less guess. Yes. But you should bring the things in first. We'll talk when you come out later. Su Yusin didn't think too much about it. He just wanted to give a generous gift. He didn't expect to buy so much. Su Qingsang glanced at him and didn't ask any more questions. She carried the things into the door. She told Xiao Ning to take good care of Xiang Kaiping before coming out again. What's the matter? Say it. Sister. Su Yusin looked around. This was really not a good place to chat. Let's find a place. Su Qingsang nodded and took Su Yusin to the lawn outside the hospital. There were 2 benches there. Old Master Li, please sit. Su Qingsang was still respectful to Old Master Li. Old Master Li felt a little embarrassed. He had just begged Hu Jinao today, and now he came to beg Su Qingsang. He didn't know if Su Qingsang would agree, or if she would be on Hu Jinao's side. Sister. I'll tell you the truth. Su Yusin told her about their visit to Hu Jinao today. He skipped the part about Lu Xiangyu's husband, thinking that Su Qingsang knew about it. He directly said that Hu Jinao wanted to put Su Peixian in jail. Su Qingsang's eyes widened. Old Master Li and Su Yusin saw her shocked expression. Both of them knew that Su Qingsang didn't know about it at all. It was good that she didn't know. Old Master Li breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced at Su Yusin. Chapter 400. The lawn of the hospital was very quiet. Su Yusin's voice was very soft, but it was very clear. Sister. We all know that Sister Peixian has gone too far this time. Daddy is going to send her away now. Brother-in-law is going to put her in jail again. Sis, she has already been punished and knows that she was wrong. Can we just let it go? Sister. You're also a member of the Su family. We're bound together for good or bad. If Sister Peixian really goes to jail, the reputation of the Su family will be ruined. We will become the joke of Lin City. Sister. I promise you, this is the last time. If Sister Peixian does anything to hurt you or Auntie again, I won't forgive her no matter what you say. Sister, let's just forget about this, okay? Su Qingsang listened to Su Yusin's words, and the shock in her eyes slowly faded. She stood there for a long time without saying a word. Half an hour later, Su Qingsang sent Su Yusin and Old Master Li off and returned to the ward. When it was almost time, Hu Jinao asked someone to bring lunch. Su Qingsang had lost her appetite because of Su Yusin and Old Master Li. But he forced himself to eat some. Xiang Kaiping immediately noticed that Su Qingsang didn't look too good. Qingsang, are you tired from taking care of me? Take a break if you're too tired. Mom, what are you talking about? I'm not tired. Su Qingsang thought about Old Master Li's arrival and Su Yusin's words. Actually, she didn't want to get involved in this matter. Su Peixian hurting Xiang Kaiping made her even angrier than hurting herself. She really wanted to teach Su Peixian a lesson. So what if she went to jail? It was just a few months. But, what's that? Is it because you don't come to work, and the leader is unhappy? Mom. Su Qingsang thought for a moment and decided to tell Xiang Kaiping the truth. She gestured for Xiao Ning to go out for a while and sat down in front of the bed again. Mom, there's something I didn't want to tell you. But I think I should ask your opinion. Su Qingsang told him about Su Yusin and Old Master Li's visit. He also told them about Hu Jinao's plan to punish Su Peixian. In fact, this was quite a severe punishment for Su Peixian. She was such a prideful person, and she was also a proud daughter of heaven. How could she bear to be locked up for a few months like this? Although Su Qingsang didn't sympathize with her, she felt that this was indeed a punishment. That's how it is. I didn't agree, nor did I agree. I don't think I have a say in this matter. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything. She really didn't like Su Peixian. Not only did he not like it, he hated it. Very annoying. She also wanted to teach Su Peixian a lesson, but going to jail, is this Jinao's idea? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. Hu Jinao has to put her in jail. That's why Su Yusin came to me. Are you close to Su Yusin? Yes. He's not like Su Peixian. He's a nice guy. Su Qingsang thought for a moment, then added, in fact, Old Master Li is a nice guy too. Although he doesn't value me, he hasn't made things difficult for me over the years. I have done all the necessary etiquette. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything. She could tell that Su Qingsang didn't have feelings for Su Peijian, but she was willing to care about Su Yusin and Old Masterly. Speaking of which, my fall has nothing to do with her. If I didn't fall over there, I wouldn't have been hit by the car. Mom. Su Qingsang held her hand. You don't have to worry about me. You just have to worry about yourself. If you feel that you have to vent your anger, then let Su Peijian go to jail. It doesn't matter. Forget it. Xiang Kaiping was still in a bad mood, but she didn't continue to dwell on this matter. I'm not an unforgiving person. Since Su Qinghui sent her abroad, then send her away. As for going to jail, forget it. Mom. You've been wronged. I'm fine. It's been so many years. What haven't I suffered? I just feel sorry for you. Mom. Su Qingsang didn't like the Su family, and she didn't like the Li family. If possible, it would be best if they didn't interact. But the current situation made it impossible for them to not interact. So, she really couldn't talk about such a thing. At night, Su Qingsang left Xiao Ning in the hospital to take care of Xiang Kaiping. She went home with Hu Jiniao and told him about old Master Li's visit. You're soft-hearted. A little. Su Qingsang nodded. I don't have a deep grudge against Su Peijian. It's just a small conflict. I think it's too heavy a punishment for her to go to jail. Hu Jiniao looked at the hesitation on her face, picked her up, and put her on his lap. You're too soft-hearted. According to him, he wanted to teach Su Peijian a lesson. He wanted to let her know next time that she had to pay the price for doing whatever she wanted. However, Su Qingsang was soft-hearted, and so was Xiang Kaiping. Not really. In fact, the Su family has neglected and ignored me for so many years. But in other aspects, they have not treated me badly. At the very least, there aren't many illegitimate daughters in Shaolin City who are raised in this family. At least she grew up safely. At least she received higher education. At least she was still here. Take her home. That might not be for her own good. Hu Jiniao was quite mean. Why don't you say that your father did it to angrily Qinxue? Su Qingsang glanced at him. Do you have to be so direct? I've always been direct. As Hu Jiniao spoke, she turned around to face him. Just like how I'm direct to you now. The hint in his words was too obvious. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. Stop it. I haven't showered yet. That's good. Let's shower together. As Hu Jiniao spoke, he picked her up. He took her in the direction of the bathroom. Su Qingsang didn't want to fall, so she could only put her arms around his neck. Hu Jiniao, huh? Don't worry, I'll wash you very clean. Who told him that? Su Qingsang glared at him. She wanted to say that they should just have a child without protection. But she didn't say that in the end. She should wait a little longer. Wait for her heart to calm down a little more. Wait for her to be more certain. Don't worry. I know you're very tired. Just once. The hint in Hu Jiniao's words was too strong. Su Qingsang turned her face away, didn't want to listen, and finally buried her face in his chest. Hu Jiniao. Yes. It's okay. It was okay even if it was more than once. She was actually willing. Hu Jiniao understood. His eyes became very eager for a moment, and he strode into the bathroom with her in his arms. Su Qingsang took care of Xiang Kaiping for a few days. After her body recovered a little and her spirit was much better, she finally returned to the department to work. On the first day of work, 2 people who were seriously injured in a car accident came, and one of them was a pregnant woman. She was 8.5 months pregnant, and the situation was very dangerous. Su Qingsang prepared for the surgery with Chief Chin. Chapter 401. The pregnant woman is hemorrhaging. She needs type O blood. I need type O blood. After the doctor finished speaking to his assistant, one of the nurses went to get the O blood. Su Qingsang couldn't care less about anything else. She couldn't afford to be distracted for even a second on the operating table. Not only did the pregnant woman hurt her stomach, but her chest was also injured. The atmosphere in the operating theater was very tense. The surgeon was performing a thoracotomy for the pregnant woman, while the obstetrician was performing a cesarean section for the pregnant woman. The 2 surgeries were carried out at the same time, but because they had cooperated many times, they were orderly. Su Qingsang and Director Chin had worked together many times and had a tacit understanding. More than an hour later, the cesarean section was over. Mother and daughter were safe. At the same time, the thoracic surgery was also over. The pregnant woman was pushed to the intensive care unit, and the newborn was sent to the infant observation room. Su Qingsang was in charge of writing the surgical records. Huang Jia, the nurse, still had some lingering fears. It was really dangerous. When the pregnant woman went into shock just now, I thought we couldn't save her. Isn't that so? Another nurse, Ching Siu, said, there was so much blood, and the blood transfusion cost 1,000 cc. It's really a miracle that he could be saved. Yes, such a large amount of blood loss. Su Qingsang glanced at them. Gossiping. Huang Jia made a zipping motion with her mouth, then turned around and left quickly. Su Qingsang glanced at the medical record and continued to write the rest of the surgical records. Not long after, the newborn's physical examination was sent over. Su Qingsang glanced at them. After confirming that there were no problems, she backed up all the records and saved them. After that, Su Qingsang went to keep Xiang Kaiping company. Are you exhausted? Xiang Caiping's waist injury hadn't healed yet, so she couldn't move for the time being. However, the bed could already be shaken up, and with the help of the caregiver, she could eat by herself in a half-sitting position. I'm not tired. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping and opened the lunchbox. Hu Jiniao had asked Yang Wenchang to go to Chaowen Courtyard to bring it over. It had been boiled until it was very fragrant. It was especially suitable for patients. Xiao Ning was very perceptive. She took the bowl and chopsticks and set them aside. If you have to work, don't come over. Xiang Kaiping felt a little uncomfortable watching her daughter take care of her. Mom, look at you. I have to eat at work too. Eat more. Look at you. You've lost weight. Nonsense. Su Qingsang's eyes widened. Do you see how thin I am? During this period of time, all the nourishing soup that you couldn't eat went into my stomach. I've basically gained weight. It's good to be fatter. Xiang Kaiping looked at her daughter and felt that she was too skinny. It's better for girls to be chubbier. No way. Su Qingsang was quite satisfied with her current figure. If I get any fatter, Hu Jiniao might not want me anymore. I heard it. Don't accuse me wrongly. Even if you were twice as fat. I don't dare to abandon you. Hearing Hu Jiniao's clear male voice, Su Qingsang stood up abruptly and turned around. Why are you here? I have an appointment with a client who is nearby. I'll come over once I'm done. Hu Jiniao said it casually, but in fact, he knew that Su Qingsang was going back to work today, so he wanted to come and see her. Have you eaten? If not, let's eat together. Okay. Hu Jiniao stepped forward and looked at the dishes in front of him. Not only did he consider Xiang Caiping's mood, but he also considered Su Qingsang's taste. Not bad. Did Wenchang bring the food here? Young Wenchang wasn't supposed to bring food, but Hu Jinyao was a little worried about letting someone else do it. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. You're a good assistant. Hu Jinyao glanced at her. If you know how much his annual salary is, you'll think he's a good assistant. How much? Su Qingsang asked casually. Hu Jinyao said a number. Su Qingsang's eyes widened. That much? Yes. Wenchang is good at everything. He could handle a lot of things very well. He was worth the salary. Such a high salary. Su Qingsang said casually. I really have no future as a doctor. I might as well be your assistant. Hu Jinyao smiled. He didn't care that there were other people in the ward and rubbed the top of her head. How can I bear to let you suffer like that? You should just focus on being Mrs. Hua. Mr. and Mrs. Hua have such a good relationship. Xiao Ning couldn't help but interrupt. Xiang Caiping smiled. It's good that they have a good relationship. I'm still waiting to have a grandchild. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable. She glanced at Hu Jinyao, afraid that he would give her away. Definitely. Hu Jinyao put his arm around Su Qingsang's shoulder as if nothing had happened. It will happen sooner or later. Mom, don't worry. Qingsang and I will definitely have 2 children in our lifetime. When we have a pair of twins, you'll be too busy every day. That's good. I'll take it seriously. Xiang Caiping was amused. If you don't have twins, you'll have to compensate me. What are you talking about? Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. She couldn't decide how many children they had. What do you want if we only have one? Nothing. Hu Jinyao put his arm around her waist and said, as long as you gave birth to him. As long as it's your child, not to mention one. Even if you give birth to a ball, I'll hold it in my hand and love it dearly. Screw you. You're the one who gives birth to a ball. Su Qingsang scolded him, only to realize that she was scolding herself. She turned her face away and ignored the sky. Xiang Caiping and Xiao Ning laughed so hard that their stomachs hurt. Especially Xiang Caiping. I say, Jinyao. My wound hasn't healed yet. You guys are teasing me like this. My wound is going to split open. Mom, are you okay? Su Qingsang suddenly became nervous. Xiang Caiping waved her hand. I'm fine. I just laughed a little too hard. Su Qingsang glared at Hu Jinyao again. It was all his fault. Hu Jinyao looked innocent and raised his hands in surrender. It's all my fault, okay? My dear wife. Su Qingsang used the excuse of scooping rice to get up and ignored him. Hu Jinyao took a step forward and looked at Xiang Caiping. Mother, look, Qingsang is angry again. Hurry up and talk to her. I won't. Xiang Caiping deliberately put on a cold face. If you're wrong, you'll be punished. I won't help you persuade her. Then tell me how to punish her, mother. Hu Jinyao was quite casual. Xiang Caiping looked at the food in front of her. It was definitely more than enough for 4 people. Then I'll punish you to finish all the food. Okay. Hu Jinyao made a gesture. Yes, mother. Xiang Caiping couldn't help but be amused by him again. For a moment, the atmosphere in the ward was extremely happy. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao. She felt that her heart was beating uncontrollably. Chapter 402. When her heart beat, she felt every cell and every drop of blood in her body rising and falling for this man named Hu Jinyao. She found that she liked Hu Jinyao more and more. She found that she was falling in love with Hu Jinyao. How could there be such a good man? It wasn't because of his looks or his family background. It was because of his kindness. He protected her and doted on her, including her family. He took good care of Xiang Caiping's 3 meals. For each meal, he asked the nutritionist and the doctor what dishes and soups were suitable for the patient. Also, Xiang Caiping's hospitalization was very boring. After all, she was lying in bed and couldn't do anything else. However, Hu Jinyao came to see her whenever he had time. Not only did he visit her, but he also tried his best to make Xiang Caiping happy. Because of them, Xiang Caiping didn't feel uncomfortable at all in the hospital. Instead, she was in a good mood. And he did all this because Xiang Caiping was his mother. That was why he loved her, and even took care of her mother so well. More importantly, Hu Jinyao had done everything because he wanted to, and he had done it. What's wrong? Is the soup not good? Hu Jinyao saw Su Qingsang holding a bowl of soup without drinking and looked at her with some confusion. It's okay. It's delicious, but it's a little hot. Is it hot? It had been so long since she packed it from Chaoan Courtyard. It shouldn't be hot anymore, right? It's not hot now. Su Qingsang smiled. Let's eat. After eating, Xiao Ning went to clean up. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao talked to Xiang Caiping for a while. Xiang Caiping was sleepy and wanted to sleep. After she fell asleep, Su Qingsang pulled Hu Jinyao up and led him outside. Are you going back to the company now? Yes. Hu Jinyao nodded. I have 2 meetings in the afternoon. Su Qingsang didn't ask anymore. She didn't know much about business anyway. However, she said, I see that you haven't had a good rest these days. Why don't you sleep at home in 2 days on the weekend? Hu Jinyao stopped, leaned over, and glanced at her. Do you feel sorry for me? Su Qingsang's face was a little hot. She looked away. Who feels sorry for you? I feel sorry for myself. You come here every day. I'm annoyed. Annoy me. I wonder whose eyes lit up when they saw me. You're mistaken. Su Qingsang refused to admit it. My eyes light up when I see who's coming. Including Su Qinghui. He had heard that Su Qinghui had come twice, but had been turned away by Su Qingsang. Xiang Caiping was nowhere to be seen. Hearing that name, Su Qingsang's expression changed. Yes, including him. I have to be extra careful when I see him. I don't want him to have a chance to see my mother. I find that you hate him now. I can't say that. My mother just doesn't want to see him. No matter how bad Su Qinghui was, he was still her father. She still had basic respect for him. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. He looked at Su Qingsang and thought of something else. Grandpa called me. Ha! Old Master Hua. He asked me to take you back to Rong City for the new year. Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang and said, he just said so, and I told him. I said that you can't leave Lin City now. I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to go back for the new year. Su Qingsang pursed her lips into a straight line and looked at Hu Jinyao. She couldn't be as calm as he was. Hu Jinyao, I'm afraid Grandpa is unhappy. Why would he be? Old Master Hua was the most open-minded. He knows about your mother's car accident and wants you to take good care of her. Don't think about anything else. Okay. Su Qingsang had dealt with Old Master Hua before and knew that he was the kindest old man. But, your parents must be unhappy, right? You don't have to worry about my parents. Hua Jinyao looked at her. He didn't want to lie to her. My parents are unhappy, but it has nothing to do with us. Just ignore them. But, I might have to go back to Rome City in a couple of days. It was close to the end of the year. In fact, he had a lot of things to do in Rome City. If it weren't for Xiang Caiping's accident, he would have flown there long ago. Will you be gone for long? Su Qingsang knew that he wouldn't come back to Lin City so soon. There are a lot of things to do. When I'm done, it might be the new year. I'll definitely have to spend time with Grandpa. Su Qingsang fell silent. They had just been married for a year, but they couldn't spend the new year together. Why don't I ask the doctor if your mother can move now? Don't ask. Su Qingsang was a doctor herself. My mother's current condition is not suitable for flying at all. Even if we fly there, we'll have to change hospitals and find new doctors. She'll have to adapt again. Although it's not troublesome for you to deal with these things, I think it's better not to. Hua Jinyao looked at her troubled face and couldn't help but laugh. Then stay. I'll try to come back on New Year's Day. I'll spend the new year with you. Don't. Su Qingsang really didn't want to do that. Actually, I was assigned to work last year and spent the new year in the hospital. It's okay. She said it calmly, but Hua Jinyao felt a little sorry for her. He thought about the past years. Even if she didn't spend the new year in the hospital, she must have had a hard time in a place like the Su family. He had decided to solve this problem as soon as possible. Then, he would come back to spend the new year with Su Qingsang. We'll talk about it when the time comes. There were still more than 10 days before the new year. Maybe Xiang Caiping could be discharged by then. Okay. After sending Hua Jinyao off, Su Qingsang went back to the ward to check on Xiang Caiping and found that she was still sleeping. She went downstairs to her own department. She didn't expect to see a few people gathered in the corridor outside the maternity ward as soon as she went downstairs. One of the men looked to be in his 30s. He was tall and thin. At that moment, he was holding Huang Jie's hand and wouldn't let go. What are you doing? Su Qingsang quickly stepped forward and stood in front of Huang Jie. She asked the man to let go of his hand. This is a hospital. Is it a place for you to make trouble? Let go. No. If you don't compensate me for my child today, I won't. I won't King let go. Compensate for what child? What child? Su Qingsang turned to look at Huang Jie. Her hand was being held by the man. Her face was distorted by the pain. Dr. Su, you're here at the right time. Explain to this family member. Explain what? He's the husband of the pregnant woman who was sent here in the car accident this morning. He just looked at the test results and insisted that we carried his child. What's going on? Explain it clearly. Chapter 403. The man grabbed Huang Jie's hand and refused to let go. Tell me what you're talking about. Tell me clearly. My wife is type O blood. I'm type AB blood. Whose is this type A child's? Whose is it? Ha! The man was very angry, and several family members behind him also spoke up. Your hospital is too unreasonable. The child was switched at birth. Yes. Where's the child? Where is it? No wonder people say that doctors nowadays are becoming more and more immoral. It's really immoral. Isn't it immoral? They don't even know who this child belongs to. Why does he have to stay in the observation room? Is there something wrong with it? I think this hospital deliberately threw this kind of problematic child to us. And then gave our healthy child to someone else. But that's it. It's too easy for the doctors and nurses in the hospital to steal the child. The group of people spoke one after another, making Su Qingsang's head hurt. Shut up. Stop arguing. Su Qingsang glared at the group of people in front of her, took 2 steps forward, and forcefully pushed the man's hand away. She pulled Huang Jia behind her. Have you guys had enough? If you have, can you be quiet for a while and listen to me? What do you want to say? What do you have to say? The man looked angry. Where is our child? Tell me. Sir, you just said that your wife is type O blood, and you are type AB blood. Now your child is type A. Is that right? When Su Qingsang said this, a very vague thought flashed through her mind. But she didn't have time to think about the current situation. Yes. The tall, thin man was still angry when he said this. He glared at Su Qingsang and said, "Can you tell me now? Hand over my child." Sir. Calm down. No one stole your child. Your child is still fine. Su Qingsang took out her phone as she spoke. Let me tell you why your child is type A, Wang Yao said. Su Qingsang's fingers moved quickly. She opened the search page and faced the tall, thin man. Look carefully. Type O blood is a recessive blood type. When it combined with type AB blood, the child born would not be type AB blood. It couldn't be type O either. They could only be type A or type B. Therefore, your son's blood type A is not a problem at all. Nonsense. The lanky man did not believe him. How could there be such a thing? I've only heard of people who take their blood type after their father or mother. I've never heard of someone with a different blood type. What do you mean by following others? That was up to you. Because type O was a recessive blood type. After the two of you get together, your AB blood type can only be passed on to your child as A or B. As for what you said about blood type coming from your parents. V had published that Mo Wenwei had type B blood, but she might give birth to type O blood. Is it because the child is type O that it's not your child? The tall and slender man frowned. Su Qingsang showed him the screen of her phone. Sir, you can find out about this kind of thing if you look it up on the internet. There's no way we can fake it. If you really don't believe me, you can do a paternity test. Let's see if we took your son from your wife's womb. Su Qingsang's words made Huang Jia glance at her. She thought that Dr. Su was really smart. Even if the child wasn't the man's, it must at least be his wife's. The tall and slender man finished reading the genetic chart. He still had a look of disbelief on his face. How could there be such a thing? Didn't they say that blood type comes from the parents? It's true that blood type comes from the parents. But blood type can also be changed during heredity. You can also see if a person with type A blood type and a person with type B. The children born could be A, B, O, or AB of any of these. Because heredity is a very complicated system, you can't just rely on a blood type to say that your child isn't yours. The tall, skinny man finally stopped after hearing Su Qingsang's words. Doctor, I'm sorry. I don't read much. I didn't know about this. Sir, you're welcome. It has nothing to do with how much you read. After all, most people don't pay attention to their own blood type. Yes, yes. I'm not in a hurry. The tall and slender man's smile was a little awkward. Then, is my child okay? Why do you think he was sent to the observation room? Your wife had a lot of bleeding when she had a car accident. Although the child wasn't obviously affected, we can observe him. It's also a safeguard for him. You can also rest assured. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor. The tall and slender man also calmed down. After thanking Huang Jia and apologizing again, he went to see the child. As he walked, he said that the hospital was really good and that the service was so good. Huang Jia's eyes widened. Dr. Su, look at these people, all right. Sometimes the patient's family is a little anxious. Let's understand. Su Qingsang patted her on the shoulder. Oh right, are you okay? I saw him holding your hand just now. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Fortunately, you came in time. You could explain if I didn't come. That's different. We're nurses. You're a doctor. There was a difference between what a doctor said and what a nurse said. Su Qingsang smiled. All right. Go back to your work. I'll go see the pregnant woman later. Okay. The group of people dispersed. Su Qingsang was about to put her phone back into her pocket when her eyes fell on the screen. Suddenly, she froze. She suddenly stood in the corridor and didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the hereditary pattern chart on the screen. She felt as if her heart was being squeezed by a hand. When type O and AB people combined, they would give birth to type A or B blood. But it could never be type AB blood. For example, a person with type AB blood could not give birth to a child with type O blood. A person with type O blood could not give birth to a child with type AB blood. Xiang Kaiping was type O blood, and she was type AB blood. What did this mean? She was not Xiang Caiping's daughter at all. Su Qingsang stood there without moving. Her eyes were fixed on the phone screen, as if she was staring at it to find an answer. There were people passing by. Some people even called her name and greeted her, but Su Qingsang didn't hear them. She just stared at the words, type O blood. The phone screen suddenly jumped. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. Seeing that it was Shi Mingwan's number, she picked it up. Qingsang, are you in the hospital? Yes. Su Qingsang came back to her senses. Hearing Shi Mingwan's familiar voice, her eyes finally focused. What's wrong? I'm at the door of your office. I didn't see you. Where are you? The moment Su Qingsang looked up, she saw Shi Mingwan at the other end of the corridor. Chapter 404. She was out of breath. She unbuttoned 2 buttons and patted Su Qingsang on the shoulder. You're not a good friend. What's wrong? Su Qingsang blinked. She hadn't come back to her senses yet. You really don't treat me as a friend. Shi Mingwan punched her. We're so familiar with each other. You didn't even tell me that Auntie had a car accident. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment and suddenly reacted. Sorry, I was too busy before. I didn't notice. If I hadn't come to see you on a whim today, would you still have planned to hide it from me? Shi Mingwan heard that Su Qingsang was going on an exchange program for half a month. She should be back by then, but she didn't answer her call in the morning. She happened to be nearby in the afternoon, so she came over. She didn't expect to hear from someone in Su Qingsang's department that she might have gone to see her mother. She asked and found out that Xiang Kaiping had a car accident. Let's go. Since we're here, I'll go see Auntie. Let's go. Xiang Kaiping might have woken up at this time. She couldn't sleep well after her lumbar spine was injured. But she couldn't take too many painkillers. So she always slept and woke up. You really don't treat me as a friend. Shi Mingwan followed behind Su Qingsang with a bit of anger on her face. In the past, Su Qingsang would have comforted her and told her that she didn't do it on purpose. But she wasn't in the mood today. Her mind was a little confused. She took Shi Mingwan to Xiang Caiping's ward. She looked at Xiang Kaiping with a rather complicated expression. She had already woken up and was quite surprised to see Shi Mengwan. Xiang Kaiping and Xiao Ning didn't notice her expression. Xiang Kaiping was busy chatting with Shi Mengwan. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping and thought, does she know that I'm not her daughter? No. She definitely doesn't know. She was still wearing the jade pendant that Xiang Kaiping gave her. The jade was warm and had become as hot as her body temperature. She thought of how Xiang Kaiping had a conflict with Su Peijian for her. She even slapped Su Peijian for her. She remembered the sweater that Xiang Kaiping had knitted for her. She had seen it on the first day she came home. It was placed on the sofa in the living room. At that time, Xiang Kaiping must have been waiting for her to come back and let her wear it. He just didn't expect that when he came back, she was already in the hospital. All the signs showed that Xiang Kaiping really thought that she was her daughter. But why wasn't she? The blood type couldn't be fake, so who was she? Qingsang. Xiang Caiping's voice brought her back to reality. The smile on her face was a little stiff. Mom. This time, the word mother was a little stiffer than usual, but no one could tell. Why are you daydreaming? Mengwan is talking to you. Qingsang, what's wrong? Shi Mengwan looked at Su Qingsang, seemingly confused by her absent-mindedness. Nothing, I just remembered that I have an operation in the afternoon. I'm asking you. Fortunately, Shi Mengwan wasn't angry. Auntie, how long are you going to stay here? How long will it take to recover? Did the doctor say anything? Stay in the hospital for at least a month. Let's see how he recovers in a month. You don't have to stay in the hospital. You can just come to the hospital for rehabilitation. So long. Shi Mengwan's eyes widened. Doesn't that mean I'll be in the hospital during the new year? That can't be helped. It's a little serious. Who would want to spend the new year in the hospital if they could? Auntie, I'll come and keep you company then. No need. Xiang Kaiping hurriedly stopped her. It's not auspicious to come to the hospital during the new year. It's the same to come after the new year. I'm fine. Auntie, you don't have to be so polite with me. Qingsang's mother is my mother. Don't worry. I'll definitely come and keep you company. Xiang Kaiping was very embarrassed. However, she didn't continue being polite. With Shi Mengwan around, Xiang Kaiping waved Su Qingsang to hurry to work. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping with a complicated expression. Finally, she nodded, said goodbye to Shi Mengwan, and left. Su Qingsang really didn't lie. There were 2 minor operations in the afternoon, and they wouldn't take long. They weren't difficult operations. She could still concentrate when she was working, but after she stopped what she was doing, she couldn't stop thinking about her relationship with Xiang Kaiping. She thought for a long time, but couldn't think of a reason. In the end, she went to the hematology department to do another blood type test. Dr. Su, why did you do a blood test? Didn't you do it during the physical examination? Facing the hematology colleague's question, Su Qingsang smiled and didn't rush to answer. For her, this question was really difficult to answer. Nothing, I just want to check. The colleague didn't ask any more questions. After helping Su Qingsang with the examination, he gave her the results. It didn't take long to check her blood type, and the results would be known in a few minutes. The blood type was clearly written on it. Her blood type was AB. As soon as Hu Jinyao entered the hospital today, he sensitively noticed that Su Qingsang's mood wasn't quite right. Although she was joking with Xiang Kaiping and making her happy, he could see that Su Qingsang's smile didn't end there. What happened? Hu Jinyao thought of the news he had received. Su Chenghui also sent Su Peixian to the United States. Li Qianxue was furious, and in the end, she went on a trip in a rage. Coincidentally, Su Yusin was also on vacation, and she took her son with her, so she wasn't in Lin City these days. In other words, it couldn't be the Su family who provoked Su Qingsang, but that might not be the case. Could it be something related to work? Hua Jinyao wasn't in a hurry to ask. He believed that Su Qingsang would tell him when they got home. Now, they were all staying at home at night. This was strongly requested by Xiang Kaiping. He said that they had to work during the day, and it would be bad if they didn't rest well at night. Xiao Ning stayed in the hospital to take care of Xiang Kaiping. She was used to being a nurse. He had taken care of many people who were more difficult to serve than Xiang Kaiping, so there was nothing to worry about. As expected, Hua Jinyao's intuition was extremely accurate. Su Qingsang fell silent as soon as she got into the car. She didn't say a word and kept her eyes on the road in front of her. Under the illumination of the streetlights, she looked a little lost, a little conflicted, and a little down that he couldn't see clearly. Wife? Are you okay? I'm fine. What could have happened to me? She had just suddenly discovered something. Hua Jinyao frowned slightly. He didn't like Su Qingsang's tone. However, he didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he sped up a little. The car stopped in front of Su Qingsang's apartment. Su Qingsang got out of the car almost as soon as it stopped. Hua Jinyao looked at her back and quickly got out of the car. Wife, are you okay? I said I'm fine. Don't worry about me now. Chapter 405. The question of whose daughter she was had haunted her for years. Later, when Xiang Kaiping appeared, she thought that this problem was gone. But he didn't expect this problem to come again. Who was she? Whose child is it? Whose daughter? Honey. Hua Jinyao took her hand, and she instinctively wanted to break free. When she realized that she couldn't break free, she was a little annoyed. Let me go. Something was wrong. Something was really wrong. Honey. Hua Jinyao didn't let go of her. Instead, he pulled her into his arms and asked, "What's wrong with you? Let go of me, I can't think with you like this." Then don't think. Hua Jinyao hugged her tightly. Don't think. Look at me. Look into my eyes. Hua Jinyao stared at her. What happened? Tell me. Su Qingsang looked at his handsome face. His deep-set features and eyes that were as bright as the stars were staring straight at her. Her lips moved, but in the end, she couldn't say a word. Her eyes were a little red and her face was a little pale. Seeing this, Hua Jinyao wrapped his arms around her waist and said, "Let's go. If there's anything, we can talk about it when we get home." Su Qingsang didn't object. She followed Hua Jinyao upstairs. She entered the house, turned on the lights, closed the door, and sat down on the sofa. He casually picked up a pillow beside him and hugged it in his arms. Hua Jinyao glanced at her, went to the kitchen, poured her a glass of warm water, and put it in her hand. Drink some water. The warm water flowed down his throat, dispersing some of the coldness from outside. Hua Jinyao turned on the air conditioner. As the temperature rose, Su Qingsang slowly calmed down. She put the cup aside and hugged the pillow in her arms tightly. "I'm sorry, Hua Jinyao. I shouldn't have done that. There was something wrong with her attitude just now." Hua Jinyao didn't speak. He just reached out and held her hand. "Don't worry about that for now. Tell me what's wrong with you. What happened?" This was the second time he had seen Su Qingsang like that, aside from the pregnant woman who jumped off the building. No, Su Qingsang felt even more depressed than last time. Su Qingsang pursed her lips into a straight line and stared at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao also stared at her. She didn't speak, and neither did he. Silence. Su Qingsang lowered her head, as if she was thinking. Hua Jinyao looked at her and patiently waited for her to speak. The temperature of the air conditioner was a little high. Su Qingsang felt a little hot. She took off her coat but didn't let go of the pillow in her arms. She tilted her head and looked at an unknown point. Hua Jinyao, have Mang Mang. Mang. Mendelian inheritance. Su Qingsang's expression was calm as she finished the sentence word by word. Su Mang, Su, Mang Mang. In layman's terms, it also includes blood type matching. For example, the combination of different blood types will produce a child with different blood types. Mang. Su, he Mang, it is Xiang. He did not know much about medicine. What's wrong with Mendelian inheritance? Did it have anything to do with her low mood today? According to the laws of Mendelian inheritance, people with type O blood, no matter which blood type they mate with, will not be able to have a child with type AB blood. Su. Hua Jinyao couldn't figure it out. Su Qingsang finally retracted her gaze and looked at his face. My mother is type O, do you know what my blood type is? What? Hua Jinyao guessed what Su Qingsang was going to say. I am type AB, Su Qingsang said calmly. Do you understand? I am type AB. Hua Jinyao thought about it carefully. After thinking about Su Qingsang's words, he looked at her with uncertainty and said, maybe your father is type AB? Hua Jinyao, you didn't hear me clearly. No matter which blood type O was combined with, they would not be able to produce a child with type AB blood. Type O is a recessive hereditary blood type. Even if Su Qingsang is type O and AB, they can only give birth to type A or B. Meeting Hua Jinyao's gaze, Su Qingsang didn't mind clarifying. In other words, even if my father is type AB, if I'm the child of my father and my mother, my blood type is either A or B. But I can't be type AB. Hua Jinyao understood. He looked at Su Qingsang with a complicated expression. You mean, I'm not Xiang Caiping's daughter, Su Qingsang said calmly. My mom couldn't give birth to me. Hua Jinyao looked at her in silence. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She didn't tell Xiang Caiping about it. Xiang Caiping hadn't recovered yet, so she couldn't tell her. She didn't want to upset her. Moreover, Xiang Caiping really treated her as her daughter. If she knew that she wasn't her daughter, she wouldn't be able to bear it. She didn't dare to think about it. More than 2 months were enough for her to develop a relationship with Xiang Caiping. She didn't want Xiang Caiping to be sad. But if she didn't tell Xiang Caiping, who else could she tell? If she wasn't Xiang Caiping's daughter, then whose daughter was she? Could she be Su Qinghui's daughter, too? If I'm not Xiang Caiping's daughter, then who am I? Whose daughter am I? Who was she? Was she Su Qinghui's daughter? If not, why did she grow up in the Su family? If so, who was her biological mother? Did Su Qinghui have a relationship with other women? Gave birth to her. So he brought her back to the Su family to raise her. Was that so? She remembered that Su Qinghui had never liked her. Was it because Su Qinghui knew? Did he know that she wasn't Xiang Caiping's daughter? Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. The clues that he felt were wrong piled up and finally connected. He had always thought it was strange. Why was Su Qinghui so cold to her child if he couldn't forget Xiang Caiping? Even if it was to protect Su Qingsang from being bullied by Li Qianxue and her son, it was too unreasonable. What's more, Su Qinghui could be cold to Su Qingsang in front of the Su family and treat her better in private. But Su Qinghui didn't treat Su Qingsang well even in private. Now he found the reason. Hearing Su Qingsang's words, Hua Ji now thought of another possibility. I think it's really possible. You're really not Su Qinghui's daughter. If I'm not his daughter, then why did he raise me in the Su family? It didn't make sense at all. Didn't I say it last time? He might have done it to anger Li Qinxue. Chapter 406. After all, Xiang Kaiping had given birth to a child, and it was a girl. If she wasn't Xiang Caiping's daughter, then what about the child? Hua Ji now raised his eyebrows and thought of a possibility. Do you think the child is gone? How could it be? Su Qingsang's eyes widened. She couldn't accept the result. I'm just guessing. According to my investigation and what your mother said, she seemed to have a difficult birth. It took her a long time to give birth to the child. You're also a doctor. Is it possible that the child died when it was born? Your father didn't want your mother to feel bad, so he hid it. Then why did he take me back to the Su family? Isn't it better if the child is gone? I told you, it might be to anger Li Qinxue. The child of the woman he loved died, but Li Qinxue's child was still fine. With Su Qinghui's personality at that time, it was very likely that he would take a child back to anger Li Qinxue. It's possible. Su Qingsang also admitted that it seemed like something Su Qinghui would do. She finally regained some spirit on her face. So, I might be an orphan. Well. Hua Ji now didn't know how to answer. Maybe you should ask your father. Su Qinghui's blood type will know. The Su family has his medical report. It was in Su Qinghui's study. But I don't think I'm his child. So many years of cold treatment, so many years of neglect. At this time, Su Qingsang suddenly seemed to have an explanation. If she wasn't Su Qinghui and Xiang Caiping's daughter, but just a child from outside, it would all make sense. Neither of them thought that Li Qinxue was the one who had a difficult birth. After giving birth, she fainted and slept for a day and a night before waking up. Especially Su Qingsang, she would never think that someone as powerful as Li Qinxue would be deceived like this. Su Qingsang was actually still very curious about her own life. Who were her biological parents? Why did they abandon her? Did Su Qinghui just randomly pick up a child, or did he prepare it in advance? She would have to meet Su Qinghui in person to give her an explanation. Su Qingsang suddenly took out her phone and dialed Su Qinghui's number. But before she could make the call, she hung up again. She lowered her head and looked at the phone in her hand, looking a little dispirited. Even if she called, even if she asked, so what? Would Su Qinghui tell her the truth? Would he tell her about his past? Most importantly, if she really asked and Su Qinghui told her, what about Xiang Kaiping? What would happen to Xiang Kaiping? Hua Ji now looked at Su Qingsang, who was exuding an extremely depressed aura. He didn't like seeing Su Qingsang like this. He got up, walked to Su Qingsang, and sat down next to her. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Su Qingsang closed her eyes and leaned her face on his shoulder. Hua Ji Niao. I can't ask. Hua Ji Niao tightened his grip on her. Ask whatever you want. If we can't find anything, we can investigate it ourselves. After all, with Su Qinghui's identity, it's still possible to find out where he brought the child home. However, it was a little difficult. After all, more than 20 years had passed. It would take more than a little time to find Su Qingsang's biological parents. I can't ask. Su Qingsang shook her head. She had slowly calmed down. At least not now. Hua Jinyao was a smart person. He almost figured it out immediately. Are you worried about your mother? After calling her that for so long, he had gotten used to it. Su Qingsang nodded. My mother came here so happily. She brought money and a guilty heart. She wanted to recognize her daughter as her own. She was so good to me. If Xiang Kaiping knew that she wasn't her daughter, if she knew that her daughter might be gone, what would Xiang Kaiping do? Not to mention that she had just been in a car accident and hadn't fully recovered. Then don't ask. Hua Jinyao turned her shoulder and looked into her eyes. Since you don't know who your biological parents are, it's good to continue like this. Su Qingsang looked at him. Her heart trembled at his unconditional support. Hua Jinyao, don't you think? I'm too useless. How could that be? You see, I used to think that I was an illegitimate daughter, but now I'm an orphan who doesn't even know who my parents are. More importantly, I don't even have the ability to find an answer for myself. Wife. Hua Jinyao lifted her body easily and held her in his arms. Don't think like that. No matter whose daughter you are, who your parents are you. Orphan or illegitimate daughter. It's all because of you. You don't need to belittle yourself. I'm not belittling myself. I just feel useless. Then if you say that, am I even more useless? I can't help you find your biological parents. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang glanced at him and suddenly smiled. You're really good at comforting people. If that was considered comforting. I'm just telling the truth. It's not comforting. As Hua Jinyao spoke, he leaned over and kissed her cheek. This is comforting. Su Qingsang blushed a little. She blinked at Hua Jinyao. Can I scold you? Ha! You're still in the mood to think about that at a time like this. She was no longer sad. Wife, that's where you're wrong. Hua Jinyao pressed his forehead against hers and lowered his voice. There was a hint of playfulness in it. It's at times like this that we need to do something like this. It can relieve our worries. Nonsense. Su Qingsang couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. But in the next second, she leaned over and gently kissed his lips. Hua Jinyao. She put her arms around his neck and said softly, let me forget those unhappy things. Yes, madam. Hua Jinyao gently lifted her body so that she was straddling him, and tightened his arms around her waist. It was an extremely crazy night, and she was exhausted to the extreme. Su Qingsang slept soundly all night and didn't have a single dream. When she woke up in the morning, her cheeks were red. After a night's sleep, she had adjusted her mood. Since she couldn't tell Xiang Kaiping now, she would pretend that she didn't know about it for the time being. As for the future, she would find an opportunity to ask Su Qinghui. It was his business whether he told her or not, but she couldn't continue living like this. Chapter 407. Nice. Isn't it nice? Su Qingsang looked at the sweater she was wearing. I think it's nice too. A hand-knitted sweater like this was definitely not comparable to a machine-made sweater. It was especially warm on her, and Su Qingsang didn't regret her decision. Mom will be very happy. Hua Jinyao was very happy that she had thought it through. Not to mention that blood was a big deal, Hua Jinyao felt that sometimes it wasn't as important as seeing one another. Even though Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang weren't mother and daughter, her motherly love for Su Qingsang came from the bottom of her heart. When Su Qingsang entered the hospital ward again, Xiang Kaiping found that she was in a good mood. She took a closer look and saw that Su Qingsang was wearing the sweater she had knitted for her. Xiang Kaiping immediately smiled and attributed her daughter's good mood to the sweater. If you like it, I'll knit it for you again after I get out of the hospital. Mom, don't knit anymore. Su Qingsang hurriedly said, if you didn't want to go out to buy wool, this wouldn't have happened. How can that be the same? I'm fine now. Don't worry. I can still do it. I won't only knit for you, but also for my grandson in the future. Looking at Xiang Caiping's smiling face, Su Qingsang once again didn't regret her choice. What did it matter whether she was Xiang Caiping's daughter or not? At least for now, she could always be Xiang Caiping's daughter. Time went by 1 week. The countdown to the Lunar New Year had entered the stage. The streets and roads began to become lively. There were more people buying things for the new year, and more people shopping on the streets. The atmosphere of the new year was very strong, but the number of patients in the hospital didn't decrease much. Su Qingsang was still busy every day, running between the department and the ward. The doctors who came for the exchange had all returned. Zhuo Hongchen also came to see Xiang Caiping. Not only Zhuo Hongchen, but almost all the colleagues in the obstetrics and gynecology department came to see Xiang Caiping. This also made Xiang Caiping feel relieved, feeling that her daughter was very popular in the workplace. She especially liked Zhuo Hongchen and thought that he was a good young man. Once when Shi Mengwan came, he said that he would introduce her to Shi Mengwan, but Shi Mengwan was scared away. Su Qingsang specially told Xiang Caiping that she could talk to Shi Mengwan about anything. It didn't matter what anyone said. There was only one thing, and that was to never talk to her about a boyfriend. She didn't elaborate on what it was, but Xiang Caiping wouldn't ask again next time. In short, everything was going in a good direction. The cured meat and sausages that Xiang Caiping had made for Su Qingsang were ready to eat. Unfortunately, Xiang Caiping couldn't eat it now. However, she didn't mind at all. She repeatedly told Su Qingsang to ask Sister Lu to cook for the couple. After nearly half a month of recovery, Xiang Caiping could already eat some light staple foods. Of course, it was still inconvenient for her to move around. When she went to the toilet, she had to rely on the nurse for daily life. However, she had Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao to take care of her, and Shi Mengwan came to accompany her from time to time. Xiang Caiping felt refreshed. At the same time, Su Qinghui, who had sent Su Peixian to the United States, returned. The first thing Su Qinghui did when he came back was to visit Caiping. Unfortunately, Su Qingsang was at work that day and was not in the ward. Xiao Ning went to fetch some water and walked away for a while. There was no one else in the ward. Su Qinghui entered the ward just like that. Xiang Caiping had already woken up. She was used to taking afternoon naps after eating, but she never slept long. Her waist was injured and she couldn't move around freely. She had to wait for about 10 more days for her rehabilitation. It had been a bit hard for her these days, but she didn't mention it to her daughter and son-in-law. Xiao Ning, please get me a glass of water. She only heard someone enter the ward, but she didn't look to see who it was. At this time, Su Qingsang was at work, and Shi Mengwan wasn't free either. Only Xiao Ning was there. There was a glass in front of her, filled with water. Xiang Caiping, who was half sitting, was about to reach out to take it. However, she clearly saw that the hand was not Xiao Ning's with some meat. The moment she looked up and saw Su Qinghui, Xiang Caiping's expression changed. What are you doing here? I'm here to see you. Su Qinghui felt very guilty towards Xiang Caiping. He held the glass of water, and the expression on his face was a little restrained. Thank you. I don't need you to see me. Xiang Caiping was angry when she saw him. Naturally, she didn't have a good expression on her face. I'll recover faster if you don't come to see me. If you come to see me, I'm afraid my life will be shortened. Her words were really rude. Su Qinghui looked a little angry. Kaiping, why do you have to be like this? You and I are two different people, not us. Xiang Kaiping made a clear distinction. Also, you are not welcome here. Please leave. Su Qinghui handed the glass a little closer, but found that Xiang Kaiping didn't take it at all. He put the glass aside helplessly. Kaiping, I've sent Peijian to the United States. That's your business. You don't have to tell me. I told her that she can't come back this new year. She has to stay there alone until the new year. Do you think this is a punishment? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qinghui, even though she knew that Su Qinghui would send Peijian away. She was also the one who said not to hold Peijian responsible. However, when she heard him say that, she was still disgusted. Peijian has never spent the new year alone. Su Qinghui looked at Xiang Kaiping. He had an inexplicable urge to let Xiang Kaiping know more. Ha! Xiang Kaiping sneered. She felt a throbbing pain in her heart. Su Qinghui, Peijian has never spent the new year alone. Do you know your daughter, Su Qingsang? Qingsang was even on duty in the hospital during the new year. Do you still feel that Peijian has been wronged? That's not what I meant. Su Qinghui looked a little embarrassed. He really didn't care where Su Qingsang spent the new year. He vaguely remembered that she was not with the Su family for 2 years. Even if Qingsang was with the Su family, do you really think of her as your daughter? Have you ever felt any warmth for her during the new year? Have you? Kaiping, calm down. I am calm. Xiang Kaiping was really calm. If I'm not calm, what I'm going to do now is to kill you and die with you. Xiang Kaiping was a little upset. She patted her chest and said, you should go. I don't want to see you. Kaiping, listen to me. Listen to me, I haven't finished what I told you the last time. Kaiping, Qingsang really isn't. Really not your daughter. Chapter 408. She lowered her head to look at her phone, then calmly put it back into her pocket. She just stood at the door and stared at Su Qinghui. Her gaze was a little strange. Su Qinghui frowned and couldn't help but take another look at Su Qingsang. He suspected that she had guessed what he had just said, but he also felt that he might be thinking too much. Su Qingsang couldn't possibly know. He wasn't quite sure, so there was a hint of hesitation on his face. On the other side, Xiang Kaiping already didn't want to see him. Qingsang, you came at the right time. Let Mr. Su go. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui. Unlike Xiang Caiping's stubbornness and indifference, she had already heard the second half of what Su Qinghui wanted to say. Su Qinghui met Su Qingsang's gaze and inexplicably felt a little guilty, but only for a moment. He turned around and looked at Xiang Kaiping. Since you're in a bad mood today, I'll come to see you next time. No need. I'm in a good mood if you don't come to see me. I'm afraid my mood will really be bad if you come to see me. Su Qinghui felt a little uncomfortable being humiliated by Xiang Kaiping in front of Su Qingsang. However, compared to feeling uncomfortable, he really didn't want Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang to be so intimate. Especially after the incident with Su Peijian, he now regretted and hesitated. He couldn't continue the thought that he wanted to blurt out when facing Su Qingsang. His face slightly darkened, he turned around and walked out. Su Qingsang looked at him. When he passed by her, she said softly, Dad, I'll walk you out. Su Qinghui glanced at Su Qingsang. He seemed to be a little surprised by her actions, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He turned around and looked at Xiang Kaiping with a look of hesitation. Seeing this scene, Su Qingsang's mood was actually extremely calm. She thought that after a week of settling down, she had already accepted the worst outcome. No matter how bad that outcome was. Su Qinghui had something on his mind, so his footsteps were a little hurried. When he was about to go to the elevator, Su Qingsang blocked in front of him. Dad. This "dad" had a deeper meaning. If you're not in a hurry to leave, why don't you come to my office and sit for a while? Su Qinghui frowned. He didn't understand what Su Qingsang wanted to do. She smiled gently. There are some things that I don't mind saying here, but I think you might prefer to say it in a place with no one around. What does that mean? Hua Ji now had threatened her because of Su Peijian. Was Su Qingsang thinking the same thing now? Su Qingsang followed Su Qinghui to her office. There was still no one. Su Qingsang gently closed the office door, walked to Su Qinghui, and stood in front of him. Su Qinghui didn't understand what she wanted to do. He stared at her face warily. What do you mean? What are you trying to say? Dad. Su Qingsang's voice was very soft. In fact, she didn't even know if she was calling him Dad. What is it? When you were in the ward just now, you actually wanted to tell my mother that I'm not her daughter. Right? Su Qinghui widened his eyes and looked at Su Qingsang as if she was a monster. What? What nonsense are you talking about? Nonsense. Su Qingsang was expressionless. Su Qinghui's expression had confirmed her guess. No, it wasn't a guess, but a fact. She wasn't Xiang Caiping's daughter, and she probably wasn't Su Qinghui's daughter either. You know very well whether I'm talking nonsense or not, don't you? Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui's expression was ugly. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. He turned to leave, and Su Qingsang didn't stop him. Don't know what I'm talking about. My mother's blood type is O. I may be. You may not know, or you know, but you pretend not to know. People with blood type O can't give birth to children with blood type AB. No matter what blood type O is combined with, they can't give birth to children with blood type A. As Su Qingsang spoke, she looked at Su Qinghui, who was standing there motionlessly, and walked toward him step by step. My mother's blood type O, and I may be. How can I be my mother's child? In the time it took to say a few words, Su Qingsang had already stood in front of Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui was very tall. He was much taller than Su Qingsang, so she had to look up to him. She raised her head and looked at the man she had called father for 25 years. If I'm right. Dad, you're not type AB, are you? Su Qinghui's expression became more and more ugly. Of course, he wasn't type AB. He was type B. Su Peijian was also type B. When Su Peijian gave birth to the child, he actually thought about it, afraid that it would be exposed. That way, he wouldn't be able to carry out his revenge. However, later, when he gave Su Peijian a physical examination, he found out that Su Peijian was actually type B. He was also type B. That was normal. After all, Li Qinshua's blood type was AB. It would be really strange if a person with blood type AB and a person with blood type B gave birth to a child with blood type O. If that was the case, Old Master Li and Li Qinshuo would definitely know. Because Su Peijian was type B, so was he. So after so many years, Li Qinshuo had never suspected it. She had never suspected that her child was actually not her. And that was the reason why Su Qinghui doted on Su Peijian so much. His 3 children. Su Qingsang and Su Yusin were both type AB. They had inherited Li Qinshuo's blood type. Only Su Peijian was type B, exactly the same as his blood type. Countless times, he had thought, see. This was the will of God. Even God approved of his revenge. Otherwise, why would Su Peijian be type B? In a short period of time, Su Qinghui's expression changed a few times, from gray to white. He looked at his daughter in front of him, who was nearly a head shorter than him. No matter how strong his mentality was, he couldn't react for a moment when the deepest secret in his heart was suddenly exposed. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui's expression and already had an answer in her heart. Dad. I'm not Xiang Caiping's daughter. Then am I your daughter? Su Qinghui's expression was ugly. He didn't answer Su Qingsang's question. He just stood there without moving. I don't think I'm your daughter either, right? When Su Qingsang said this, she kept staring at Su Qinghui's face. He seemed to suddenly come to a realization. I'll say it again, what nonsense are you talking about? There's nothing like that. Nonsense. Su Qingsang nodded and narrowed her eyes. If I were your daughter, if I were Xiang Caiping's daughter. Then, did you really love Xiang Caiping? Su Qinghui's face was livid and he didn't speak. He didn't want to say it, so Su Qingsang spoke for him. If you loved her, how could you have the heart to treat the child of a woman you truly loved like this? So you don't love my mother at all. Right? Chapter 409. As soon as he opened his mouth, it would be easy for him to make a mistake and give Su Qingsang something to use against him. He had already made a mistake once. He couldn't make another one. Su Qinghui remained silent. It was impossible for him to remain silent. Faced with Su Qingsang's aggressive attitude, he suddenly felt a little annoyed. I'll say it again. I don't know what you're talking about. If you're not Xiang Caiping's daughter, then who are you? Maybe Su Qingsang was just lying to him. If she wasn't Xiang Caiping's daughter, how could she be so close to Xiang Caiping after only a few months? It was clear that they had never lived together, and it wasn't like they grew up together. If she was sure, she would have left Xiang Caiping alone. Su Qingsang stared at his face. She wasn't surprised by his stubbornness and concealment. Su Qingsang sighed softly, but she had to say what she wanted to say next. Don't you find it strange? I know I'm not my mother's daughter, but I didn't tell her. Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He really didn't know his daughter well. Because even if my mother and I are not related by blood, I still see her as my mother in my heart. As Su Qingsang spoke, she lowered her head and glanced at herself. She was wearing the sweater that Xiang Caiping knitted and the necklace that Xiang Caiping gave her. The cured meat and sausages that Xiang Caiping bought for her were still hanging on the balcony of her house. She could still hear Xiang Caiping's gentle words and instructions every morning. These were the motherly love that she had never received since she was a child. She couldn't bear to. Even though she knew Xiang Caiping wasn't her mother, she couldn't bear to. She couldn't bear to hurt Xiang Caiping's heart. She had been so good to her. What if Xiang Caiping found out that the daughter she had been taking care of with all her heart wasn't her daughter? Su Qingsang didn't dare to think about it. She didn't even dare to gamble. She didn't want to hurt an innocent woman's heart. Dad. Can you tell me who I am? Who is my mother? Who is my father? Who gave birth to me? Who brought me into this world? Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui looked at his daughter and felt helpless for the first time. I'll say it again. Everything you said just now is nonsense. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui coldly. She wasn't stupid. Su Qinghui's attitude was very problematic. Her brain worked very fast. Many details and possibilities flew through her mind one by one. The fact that I'm not Xiang Caiping's daughter is already set in stone. This is something you can't deny. If you really want proof, I can do a paternity test with my mother. Su Qingsang looked into Su Qinghui's eyes and said slowly, a paternity test can't be faked. Whether I'm Xiang Caiping's daughter or not, we'll know once we do the test. Su Qinghui's expression finally changed a little, but it was only for a moment. He quickly regained his composure. Su Qingsang had been staring at his face, trying not to miss any expression on his face. I really want to know now. If I'm not Xiang Caiping's daughter, am I your daughter? Really? Su Qinghui seemed to have finally regained his confidence. Su Qingsang, I said don't talk nonsense. If you're not my daughter, whose daughter are you? Did she think he had the leisure to help raise someone else's daughter? As soon as he said that, Su Qinghui immediately realized that he had said something wrong. Sure enough, he saw the corners of Su Qingsang's mouth rise slightly with some understanding. She seemed to have finally found out Su Qinghui's secret. I'm your daughter. Su Qingsang looked into Su Qinghui's eyes. Really? Are you sure? Su Qingsang, what kind of attitude is that? Su Qingsang didn't ask any more. Su Qinghui's angry face made her believe what he said. Which man would like to help raise someone else's child? That meant that she must be Su Qinghui's daughter. She nodded and looked at Su Qinghui, her eyes clear. I'm your daughter. But I'm not Xiang Caiping's daughter. In other words, when my mom and auntie didn't know about it, there was a fourth party somewhere else. Su Qingsang. Have you said enough? Su Qinghui couldn't listen anymore. Who did Su Qingsang think he was? What fourth party? That was really unpleasant to hear. You betrayed my mother and auntie. You really don't love my mother. In fact, Su Qingsang could easily guess that Su Qinghui didn't love Xiang Caiping. If he really loved her, they would have been together back then. Don't say that the Li family forced him or anything. She had lived with old Master Li and Li Qianxue for a long time. To put it bluntly, if Su Qinghui didn't agree, could the Li family force him to go to the hole? Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui didn't know what else to say. He could only call Su Qingsang's name again. Shut up. What would a child like her know about adult affairs? Su Qingsang smiled, and that smile was meaningful. Does auntie know? She had always thought that Su Qinghui was a bit of a scumbag. But now it seemed that Su Qinghui was really not an ordinary scumbag. On the one hand, he was having sex with Li Qianxue, on the other hand, he was constantly in contact with Xiang Caiping, and on the other hand, there was another woman who came out of nowhere. It was the first time she knew that Su Qinghui could be so capable. Su Qingsang, shut up. Su Qinghui's expression was ugly. He took a step forward and almost lost his temper. Have you said enough? No. Su Qingsang was distracted, but she didn't intend to retreat at all. I haven't said enough. I have the right to know who my biological mother is, right? Su Qinghui was stunned for a moment. He suddenly turned his face away. That's not something you should worry about. Not something I should worry about. Su Qingsang wanted to laugh. Then what should I worry about? Dad, although you don't like me, I have called you Dad for more than 20 years. All I want now is a true an answer. Can't you give it to me? There is no answer. You are thinking too much. If there is no answer, can I think that I am not your daughter? Su Qingsang. What kind of attitude is that? I told you, what you just said is nonsense. If you are not my daughter, whose daughter are you? Okay. You said that I am your daughter. Then let me ask you, where is my mother? Where is my mother? Who is my mother? Chapter 410. No one. Su Qingsang had never thought that her relationship with Su Qinghui would become like this one day. But I just want to know the answer. Is it difficult? Or is it difficult to tell the identity of the person who gave birth to me? You, isn't it? If it wasn't for the fact that the person who gave birth to me had such a difficult identity for you to speak of, why would you still be so secretive at this point? Su Qinghui's face was red. He didn't answer Su Qingsang's question. Su Qingsang didn't expect him to give her an answer so easily. But she still had doubts in her heart. She didn't understand, and she wanted to know the answer. She couldn't help but take a step forward and look up at Su Qinghui. Dad, am I the product of a one-night stand? You. Su Qinghui was angry. He raised his hand and almost slapped Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang just raised her head and stared at him. Audi Qin Rui's hand paused in the air for a few seconds, and finally retracted it. Humph! Su Qinghui snorted and left without looking back. This time, Su Qingsang didn't stop him. She stood there and stared blankly at the door that Su Qinghui had slammed shut. She was a little tired and weak. She took a step back and leaned against the desk. She had solved half of her doubts, but there was still the other half. Su Qinghui was her father. That should be true. What about her mother? What kind of life gave birth to her? Which woman did Su Qinghui have a close relationship with before? She couldn't figure it out. If he didn't say, no one would know. Who should she ask? If Su Qinghui didn't tell her the answer, who else could she ask? Her phone suddenly rang. She looked at Hua Jinyao's name and picked it up. Hua Jinyao returned to Rome City 2 days ago. It was almost the end of the year. Even as the president of Tianyu Group, he couldn't be too capricious. There were a lot of things to deal with in Rome City. Su Qingsang knew that he was very busy. Several times at night, she could still hear him typing on the keyboard. From time to time, she could hear Yang Wenchang reporting to him. Why are you calling me at this time? Su Qingsang looked at the time. Have you had lunch? Yes, I have. Hua Jinyao handed a document to Yang Wenchang and signaled him to leave with his eyes. Didn't you take a nap? Nope. Something came up and I couldn't sleep. Su Qingsang's mood was affected by Su Qinghui's reaction. What's wrong? Hua Jinyao immediately sensed that something was wrong in her voice. What happened? Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang cleared her throat. I'm not an orphan. You asked your dad? Yes. He just came to see my mother. Su Qingsang repeated what Su Qinghui had said to Su Qingsang. Of course, she didn't mention that Su Qinghui was so angry that he almost wanted to hit her. You're saying that your father admitted that you're his daughter, but he didn't tell you who your mother was? Yes. And no matter how I asked, he wouldn't tell me. Su Qingsang was a little upset. Is my birth mother someone with a bad background? Otherwise, why would Su Qinghui act like this? Not necessarily. Hua Jinyao thought a little more than Su Qingsang. Is it possible that your birth mother's identity is not only not bad, but also shocking? What do you mean? Think about it. Your father was able to win Li Qianchue's favor, and he insisted on marrying her. It's hard to say that there aren't any rich ladies in Lin City who also liked your father. But they couldn't compete with Li Qianchue, so they simply gave up. Hua Jinyao said it casually, and Su Qingsang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Come on. You may not know what the Li family was like back then. Who was brave enough to compete with Li Qianchue for a man? Did they want to die? What else could they do? They can't explain it. If you were born to a woman outside, he could just tell Li Qianchue who gave birth to you and whose daughter you are. Anyway, you don't need to be afraid of the itch when there are so many lice. It's the same to find a woman outside, and it's also the same to find two women outside. Hua Jinyao. That's enough. Su Qingsang couldn't listen to it anymore. Although I think my father is quite a scumbag, why do I feel that your guess is even more unreliable than mine? How is it unreliable? Hua Jinyao thought it was completely possible. If you ask me, you might be the daughter of a rich family. But because you can't go against the Li family, your father is very secretive and refuses to say it directly. Hua Jinyao looked at the screen in front of him and said it casually. However, the idea of not going against the Li family flashed through his mind. A very absurd thought flashed through his mind. In fact, was it possible? Su Qingsang bit her lip and didn't answer Hua Jinyao's words. Alright, you haven't told me why you called me at this time. After Hua Jinyao went to Rong City, he would call her every night, but this was the first time he called at this time. Thinking of this, Hua Jinyao's thoughts stopped thinking about Su Qinghui. There is something. Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft. Grandpa wants you to come to Rong City for the new year. I have already refused. But he said that he can send someone to pick you and Mom up in a private plane. He also said that if you are worried, he will hire the best medical staff. Why so suddenly? Is it because you have to go to Rong City for some reason? Hua Jinyao paused for a moment and thought of something. I may have forgotten to tell you. My grandpa has a brother and a sister. I also have a great-uncle and a great-aunt. They usually don't live in Rong City. Every year during the new year, my great-uncle and great-aunt will come over. My great-aunt and great-uncle know that I am married. They want to see you. If it were anyone else, Hua Jinyao naturally wouldn't care. But his great-uncle, Hua Yangyuan, and great-aunt, Hua Yangshu, were not ordinary people. They were 2 generations older than him. It was normal for them to want to see the eldest granddaughter-in-law of the Hua family. This request was completely reasonable, not to mention that this was the first year of Su Qingsang's marriage. Qingsang. My grandpa said that he will arrange the best hospital. Please rest assured. He will make sure that our mother receives the best care. Did this mean that she had to go to Rong City with him? Hua Jinyao. Do you have a lot of people in your family? Are you afraid? I am not afraid. I just feel that it is a little troublesome. She had already met Hua Jinyao's uncle and aunt, as well as his group of cousins last time. At that time, she thought that was all. But she didn't expect that there would be another great-uncle, and then another great-aunt. In addition to the children of these great-uncles and great-aunt, how many relatives would there be? Chapter 411. Su Qinghui's parents left early. Moreover, Old Master Li was the most senior in their area. In the past, she had always been invisible. If the Li family had relatives, it was not her turn to greet them. Occasionally, she would bump into them, but the way they looked at her made her feel uncomfortable. To be honest, Su Qingsang didn't really like interacting with relatives. She liked simple relationships. The simpler, the better. Hua Jinyao suddenly fell silent. He thought of Su Qingsang's personality and how she had grown up. It's fine if you think it's troublesome. Hua Jinyao smiled. I'll tell Grandpa that you won't come back. Wouldn't that be inappropriate? Su Qingsang didn't like to deal with too many relatives, especially those she wasn't familiar with. However, she was not a fool. She knew about simple interpersonal relationships and the ways of the world. Hua Jinyao was the eldest grandson of the Hua family and was highly regarded by Old Master Hua. However, it was not good for him to be too arrogant and completely ignore his relatives and friends. It's okay. If there was any pressure, he would naturally bear it. Even if Hu Jinyao was worried about his great-uncle and great-aunt, he didn't want Su Qingsang to be wronged. If you don't want to come here, then stay in Lin City. When our mother recovers, we'll bring her along. As for the relatives and friends he had to deal with during the new year, he would deal with them. Hu Jinyao. Was she making things difficult for him by being so willful? Don't worry, we're just getting started. What's the point of this year's New Year? Next year, the year after that, we'll celebrate many New Years together. Although she said that, she knew that Hu Jinyao was compromising. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang wanted to say thank you, but the words, thank you, were too light. Moreover, there was really no need to be overly courteous between them. I missed you. The corners of Hu Jinyao's mouth turned up. He was obviously in a much better mood. I missed you too. Go on with your work. I have to work. She heard footsteps outside the door. Yes. When I'm done, I'll come back to see you. Okay, Su Qingsang agreed. She hung up the phone and pressed it against her heart. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. It didn't matter whose daughter she was anymore. Because now, she had her mother and Hu Jinyao. As for who her birth mother was, she would slowly investigate it in the future. She believed that it was impossible for there to be no clues. What Hu Jinyao said just now actually made some sense. Su Chenghui couldn't tell Hu Jinyao about her biological mother. A thought flashed through Su Qingsang's mind, but it was too fast for her to grasp. Lin City was getting colder and colder. It was less than a week before the new year. Some units were already on holiday. There were no holidays in the hospital. The first day to the 7th day of the new year was a holiday. However, there were also doctors on duty every day. This year, Xiang Kaiping was hospitalized. Su Qingsang offered to let her work on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. There were fewer patients than usual during the Spring Festival. The people of China were particular about auspiciousness. Even if they were feeling unwell, they would wait until after the New Year. It wasn't that no one gave birth on the first day of the Lunar New Year, but it was a rare occurrence. Su Qingsang could catch her breath and rest for a while. The only regret was that Xiang Kaiping was hospitalized and could not go home. On New Year's Eve, Su Qingsang finished her work in the hospital early. After work, she asked Xiao Yu to look after her for a while and went home. Xiao Yu was the second caregiver she hired. Xiao Ning was going home for the new year. Xiao Yu was another caregiver Su Qingsang hired. She went home. Sister Lu was originally from Lin City. She knew that Su Qingsang was coming back, so she didn't leave. Sister Lu, thank you. This was arranged by Su Qingsang beforehand. She wanted Sister Lu to work hard for another day. Sister Lu didn't let her down. She made a table full of dumplings and cooked a few dishes for them. Thank you, Sister Lu. Su Qingsang took out the red packet she prepared in advance. Sister Lu, thank you for the past few months. Go home for the new year first. I still need you to come back to help me after the new year. Sister Lu didn't stand on ceremony. She took the red packet and went home. Su Qingsang packed up the dishes cooked by Sister Lu, packed the dumplings, and hurried back to the hospital. It was only 7 o'clock. She told Xiao Yu to go home first. Mom. Are you tired of lying down? Let's have dumplings today. Su Qingsang took out the dumplings. Watch TV first. I'll cook the dumplings right away. Look at you. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang's busy figure. She was very touched, but also very guilty. It's the new year, but you have to stay in the hospital with an old woman like me. Mom, if you say that again, I won't be happy. Su Qingsang put the water on the induction cooker to boil. She had specially brought this over. She could heat up food for Xiang Kaiping or something. As long as she didn't cook, the hospital would turn a blind eye to it. You're not old at all. If I go out with you now, people will definitely say that we're sisters. You're good at coaxing me. I'm not coaxing you. I'm telling the truth. Su Qingsang took out the vegetables and put them down. Wait for a while. I'll cook the dumplings and heat up the vegetables. Mom, don't think it's lonely. It's just the two of us celebrating the new year. It's not lonely. It's not lonely. Compared to the past few decades, this was already the happiest year for her. Although it was a little lonely, it was already very good. I just don't think it's good that you don't go back to Rong City and spend the new year with Jinyao. Thinking of Hu Jinyao calling and saying that he couldn't come to Lin City because he had too many things to do, Xiang Kaiping felt a little regretful. Mom, look at what you're saying. Jinyao understands and said that he supports my decision. Why are you still talking about it? In fact, Su Qingsang wasn't without worry. However, Hu Jinyao repeatedly promised that nothing would happen, so she could only relax and focus on spending time with Xiang Kaiping. Su Qingsang didn't know how to cook, but she was still very agile. The water boiled. She put the dumplings into the pot, calculated the time, and put the vegetables in the microwave. In less than 20 minutes, the dumplings were cooked, and the vegetables were also heated. She placed the dishes on the small table above the hospital bed. Then, she shook Xiang Caiping's bed. Xiang Kaiping had recovered a lot during this period of time. Although she couldn't use force or exercise strenuously, she could still sit up normally. But getting up and sitting up normally was fine. Su Qingsang placed the dishes on the table and scooped a bowl of soup for her. Mom, you can't drink alcohol in your body, so use the soup as a substitute for alcohol. I wish our new year will be better and better. Okay. Xiang Kaiping nodded and picked up the bowl of soup. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Su Qingsang smiled. Although the two of them ate simple and stayed in a hospital ward, the atmosphere was quite good. Chapter 4:12. The restaurant was very quiet. No one was talking, and no one was smiling. The atmosphere was quite depressing. Li Qianxue sat at the long dining table. The table full of steaming delicacies didn't make her look good at all. In the past, there were 5 people for the New Year's Eve dinner, but now there was one less person. How could Li Qianxue not be angry? She didn't expect Su Qinghui to be so cruel. He really didn't want Su Peijian to come back for the new year. Su Peijian was her first child, and she had spent the most effort on her. Unlike Su Yusin, when Su Peijian was born, her body was very weak, and her immune system was not good. It was the little daughter that she was afraid of dropping. It was the first time in more than 20 years that she didn't spend the new year with her. Li Qianxue's expression was ugly. She sat there without saying a word. Because of her expression, the atmosphere at the dining table was no longer festive at all. Mom. Su Yusin was the first one who couldn't stand the atmosphere. Let's eat. Li Qianxue didn't want to eat it. She really couldn't take this lying down. Su Qinghui, are you even human? You sent your daughter so far away for an outsider. You didn't even let her come back for the new year. Are you punishing her? You're punishing me. Mom. Su Yusin really didn't want to hear Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui quarrel. Don't talk so much. I'll be back in 2 days. Who knows? Li Qianxue glared at Su Qinghui. Your father sent your sister so far away. Who knows if he'll let her come back? Chinchua, old Master Li said, you're almost the same. It's the new year. How can you behave like this? Dad, you know it's Chinese New Year, but does he want me to have a good time? He won't let me have a good New Year. Thinking about Su Peixian, Li Chinchua was so angry that she couldn't even eat. Peixian has never spent the New Year alone. I don't know if she's eating now. Does it feel bad to be alone? That's enough. Old Master Li thought of the conditions he had discussed with Hu Jinyao. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping were soft-hearted and willing to let it go, they would not have let it go. Su Peixian was not in the United States now, but in prison. However, he couldn't tell Li Chinchua about such a thing. She would never accept that her daughter would do such a thing. This was actually a good thing. Su Peixian could go abroad to calm down. He also knew the difference between them. Peixian is no longer a child. There are so many people out there. Don't they still have to live without you? Why couldn't Peixian do it? You don't have to say anything. Sit down and finish the meal. Dad, I'm old. I don't like to hear you guys make trouble, and I don't want to see you guys make trouble. If you want me to live a few more years, don't say any more. Li Chinchua gritted her teeth. No matter how angry she was, she could only let it go in front of old Master Li. However, the more she looked at Su Qinghui, the more disappointed she was. Especially when she found that he was sitting there without saying a word, she became even more furious. See, even if she messed with him like this, he didn't have any reaction. Sometimes, she would rather Su Qinghui quarreled with her. But what about him? Most of the time, he just didn't say a word and looked at her like a clown. In fact, she had already discovered it a long time ago. This man was making her more and more unable to move. It was just that in the past, they had children, and their father had scruples. But she didn't know when it started, but she had really become more and more powerless. She lowered her head. It was the new year, but the atmosphere at home was not good at all. Su Yusin didn't say anything. He didn't understand what was going on with this family. They were fine when they were young, but as they grew up, it became less and less like a family. And he also didn't know how to change the situation. It wasn't that Su Qinghui didn't see Li Chinchua's anger, it wasn't that he didn't see old Master Li's hidden disappointment, it wasn't that he didn't see the anticipation in Su Yusin's eyes. It was just that today, he really wasn't in the mood. After that day, he never went to the hospital again. On the one hand, Xiang Kaiping didn't want to see him, and on the other hand, he didn't want to see Su Qingsang. He used to think that he was the only one who knew the secret, but now Su Qingsang knew it. Su Qinghui never thought that the day would come when the secret would be found out. The revenge he imagined was when Li Chinchua grew old and found that everything was irreversible. But not now. Su Qinghui's mood during this period of time was quite complicated. If Su Qingsang knew, then Hu Jinyao must also know. Su Qingsang might not be able to guess at the moment, but with Hu Jinyao's intelligence, he might be able to guess Su Qingsang's real identity sooner or later. What would happen then? If one day, Su Qingsang's identity really came to light and the whole Lin city knew, what would happen? Su Qinghui didn't have the mood to think about anything else. He raised his head and his eyes fell directly on Li Chinchua's face. With old Master Li around, the anger on her face dissipated a lot, but she still wasn't happy. Her face was cold, and her facial features, which were brighter than normal people, looked quite cold at the moment. Speaking of which, Su Qinghui couldn't remember when was the last time he saw Li Chinchua happy. Sensing Su Qinghui's gaze, Li Chinchua raised her head and glanced at him. Her eyes were cold. What? What do you want to say? Don't worry. If you want to scold me, just scold me. It's the new year. For my father's sake, I won't argue with you. Su Chenghui felt a little suffocated for some reason. He lowered his head and glanced at the dishes on the table. Let's eat. His voice was too gentle. Li Qianxue glanced at him, thinking that he was going to make trouble again. Her eyes were a little more alert. Not only Li Qianxue was looking at him, but Su Yusin and Old Master Li were also staring at him. Su Chenghui, who was very uncomfortable under their gazes, picked up the wine in front of him and toasted Old Master Li. Dad, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Old Master Li raised his glass very politely. After toasting Old Master Li, Su Chenghui clinked his glass with Su Yusin's. Study hard. After the new year, you will be a year older. In the future, the Su family will still rely on you to support it. I will. Dad. Happy New Year. Okay. Su Chenghui nodded and finally looked at Li Qianxue. He raised his glass and toasted in her direction. Happy New Year. This was a routine toast every year. Li Qianxue sat there without moving. She still hadn't swallowed the anger in her heart. Su Chenghui looked a little embarrassed, but he didn't take back his glass. Qianxue. Li Qianxue was stunned and couldn't help but glance at Su Chenghui. She had almost never heard Su Chenghui call her name. Every time he called her by her full name, and sometimes he didn't even have a name. Chapter 413. Li Qianxue couldn't be blamed for conspiring against Su Chenghui. She felt that she had seen through him. This man had no heart. Or maybe he had a heart, but his heart was not with her. It was with someone else. Thinking of her daughter, Li Qianxue's face darkened again. Su Chenghui, don't think that I will forgive you if you humble yourself. I won't talk to you until Peixian comes back. Qianxue. Old Master Li couldn't stand it anymore. Are you going to celebrate the new year or not? Li Qianxue was angry, but because of Old Master Li, she finally raised her glass. She didn't touch her glass with Su Chenghui's. She just raised it and took another sip. Su Chenghui didn't relax when he saw that. Instead, he felt even more depressed. Li Qianxue loved Su Peixian so much. If one day she found out that Su Peixian wasn't her daughter, it was the new year. It should be very lively. Su Chenghui suddenly felt a chill in his heart. After eating, Su Qingsang put away the bowls. Although she brought a lot of dishes, the portion was not big. She watched TV with Xiang Kaiping while eating. Most of it was done. She cleaned up the leftovers and washed the bowls. Then she sat down to watch the Spring Festival Gala with Xiang Kaiping. Su Qingsang rarely watched the Spring Festival Gala. It was rare for her to watch it with Xiang Kaiping. She didn't think it was as ugly as the people on the internet said. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang with a faint smile on her face. Qingsang, I'm really happy to spend the new year with you. Me too. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping. Finally, I'm not alone anymore. Sometimes I feel that I might be dreaming. Otherwise, how could I have such a good daughter like you? Su Qingsang smiled and said, Mom, what are you talking about? I'm right here. Do you still think that you're dreaming? Yes. Xiang Kaiping thought of what she had been through all these years. She looked a little emotional. I think I'm a person with little luck. That's why I often wonder if I'm lucky enough to have such a good daughter like you. Su Qingsang's heart skipped a beat. She held Xiang Caiping's hand and said uncomfortably, Mom, I'm not going to be happy if you say that again. Can I also say that I'm a lucky person? Otherwise, how could I have such a good mother like you? All right. Xiang Kaiping finally stopped talking. I won't talk about it anymore. It's the new year, let's talk about something happy. That's more like it. Su Qingsang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It just so happened that the Spring Festival Gala had reached the part of the skit. Xiang Kaiping focused on the TV. Xiang Kaiping was injured, and she was not young anymore. After looking at her for a while, she became very sleepy. Su Qingsang fetched some water, carefully helped her wash up, and let her sleep first. After Xiang Kaiping fell asleep, she quietly turned off the TV and went out with her phone to call Hu Jinyao. The phone rang for a while, but no one answered. Su Qingsang frowned and gently put the phone back into her pocket. She wanted to go back to the ward to sleep, but she was afraid that Hu Jinyao would call her back later. After hesitating for a while, Su Qingsang set the phone to vibrate and went back to the ward. Lying on the small bed in the ward, she couldn't fall asleep. What was Hu Jinyao doing? Why didn't he answer the phone? Last time, he said that many relatives were coming. Was it because there were too many relatives, and he was busy dealing with them? Su Qingsang fell asleep while her mind was running wild. In a daze, she felt the phone under her pillow vibrate. She subconsciously reached out and saw the screen lit up. Su Qingsang was still not fully awake. Looking at Xiang Kaiping, who was still sleeping, she picked up the phone, put on her coat, and went out to the corridor to answer the phone. Are you asleep? Hu Jinyao's voice came from the other end of the phone. Su Qingsang blinked. The cold wind in the corridor woke her up instantly. Yes. I'm asleep. You called me just now. Yes. What are you busy with? Nothing. In fact, the Hu family was really lively this year. This year, because of Hu Jinyao's wedding, old Master Hu's younger brother, Hu Yangyuan, also returned to Rong City for the new year. As for old Master Hu's younger sister, Hu Yangxiu, she was with her husband and would only be back in 2 days. Hu Yangyuan worked in the province. In the past, he would spend the new year in the same place where he worked. After all, with his status, there were countless people who came to visit him during the Lunar New Year. He used to be afraid of trouble, so he rarely came to Rong City. After all, old Master Hu wouldn't be able to live in peace once he arrived. He had to entertain those people. Although Hu Yangyuan was a high-ranking official, he still respected old Master Hu. This year was different. On the one hand, Hu Jinyao, the eldest grandson of the Hu family, was getting married. This was a joyous occasion. They hadn't been in Rong City before, so they hadn't been able to come over. Now, they were taking advantage of the new year to visit their grandnephew's wife. On the other hand, it was time for Hu Yangyuan to retire. He had completed the retirement procedures in the second half of the year and planned to return to Rong City to enjoy his retirement. As for his network in a province, he was not worried at all. He was different from Hu Mingguang and Hu Mingliang, who liked to do business. His eldest son, Hu Mingfan, had already finished his training. In a few years, he would be able to go further up the ladder. Since the young man had already gone up, he could naturally retire as an old man. He felt relaxed and energized. He wanted to see what Hu Jinyao's other half was like when he came to Rong City. However, when Hu Yangyuan arrived, he realized that Hu Jinyao's wife hadn't come back. Hu Yangyuan was fine. He had been in the officialdom for a long time and was used to hiding. However, Hu Mingliang's 2 sons weren't so good-tempered. Granduncle. It's because you're too insignificant. Sister-in-law doesn't want to come back. Isn't that so? If you ask me, Jinyao dotes on his wife too much. He's probably the first person in Rong City who doesn't spend the first year of his marriage with his in-laws. Hu Mingmei laughed exaggeratedly. Why are you talking about this during the Lunar New Year? If you ask me, Jinyao's marriage might not be true. After all, Dad wants to have a great-grandson every day. Isn't it popular to rent a girlfriend for the Lunar New Year? If you can rent a girlfriend, can't you rent a wife too? Sister-in-law, speaking of this, I think you should really discipline your Jinyao. It would be a joke if people knew that a family like ours has to rent a wife. Would Jinyao listen to his relative's words? He was expressionless and unmoved. Lu Tongjia's face darkened when she heard those words. Chapter 4:14. It was one thing for Hu Jinyao to marry a woman she didn't like. It was another thing for him to stay in Lin City every day for that woman. Now, he didn't even bring her back for the new year. She was such an ignorant woman, but Hu Jinyao treated her like a treasure. Lu Tongjia wanted to lose her temper. But after thinking about it, she held it in. We shouldn't get involved in the affairs of young people. He can do whatever he wants. Lu Tongjia looked at Hu Mingmei. It's the new year. It's rare for you to come back. Let's talk about something happy. Hu Mingmei was led by Lu Tongjia to change the topic, but Hu Jinyao just felt bored. He looked at Lu Tongjia, not sure if he was disappointed or right. But this was Lu Tongjia. No matter how bad he was outside and how dissatisfied she would immediately put away her dissatisfaction and speak up for him when there were outsiders around. And he was like a bystander, enjoying a good performance. Hu Jinyao looked at the group of people expressionlessly. His family. His flesh and blood. Among them were his closest parents. But he didn't feel any parental love from his parents. He thought of Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping wasn't Su Qingsang's biological mother, but she treated Su Qingsang better than a real mother. All of a sudden, he felt annoyed. He stood up and walked out. Where are you going? Lu Tongjia saw that her son was about to leave. The whole family is here. Where are you going? Nowhere. I'm just going to make a phone call. Hu Jinyao turned around and glanced at Hu Mingmei. He seemed to be mocking her. After all, my wife is rented. If I don't call her now, I'm afraid that someone will offer a higher price, and my wife will run away with someone else. Hu Jinyao left just like that. Hu Mingmei finally realized that she had been insulted by Hu Jinyao. Her face turned green. Sister-in-law, look at him. Look at his attitude. Lu Tongjia didn't look happy either. Since when did she and Hu Jinyao become strangers? Their relationship was getting worse and worse. Hu Jinyao didn't want to repair it, and neither did she. There was clearly a better solution, but the mother and son were stuck in a deadlock. No one was willing to lower their heads first. Hu Mingmei still wanted to complain. However, seeing Lu Tongjia's expression, Su Qingsang knew that if she said more, she would be disliked. After thinking for a while, Su Qingsang gave up. Hu Jinyao shook his head and tried not to think about those annoying things. Don't you want to stay up all night? Su Qingsang's voice came through the phone gently, like a feather gently tickling his heart. Yes. But I want to stay up with you on New Year's Eve. Staying with Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping made him feel more at home. Next year, we can definitely stay up together. Yes. Hu Jinyao nodded. He was very happy with Su Qingsang's affirmation. By the way, is Mom asleep? Yes. I went to bed early. Su Qingsang looked out of the hospital. She could vaguely hear the sound of fireworks in the distance, but she couldn't see them from the corridor. She took her phone and walked towards the window at the end of the corridor. What about you? Have you eaten? Yes. The Hu family's New Year's Eve dinner this year was very lively because of Hui Yang Yuan's visit. I ate too. Su Qingsang had already walked to the window. She could see that there were really people setting off fireworks not far away. What did you eat? It's just you and Mom. You didn't just eat casually, did you? Hua Jinyao had said that he would help her arrange everything, but she refused. Why would I? It's New Year's Eve. I asked Sister Lu to make dumplings. She also cooked a few side dishes. We even stir-fried the sausages that Mom made. It smells really good. I want to eat. Hua Jinyao had been away from Su Qingsang for 10 days. Although they could call each other every day, he didn't realize that he missed her very much until they were really apart. When you come back after New Year's, I'll ask Sister Lu to cook for you. I want to eat what you cook. Can I? Hua Jinyao took the opportunity to make a request. Hua Jinyao. Her cooking skills were actually very average. She could only cook a few simple vegetables. My cooking doesn't taste good. I don't care. Anyway, I want to eat what you cook. Just tell me if you'll cook for me or not. This person really had the potential to be a scoundrel. Yes, yes, yes. I'll cook for you, okay? That's what you said. Hua Jinyao's hazy mood was swept away at this moment. I'll be waiting. Su Qingsang wanted to laugh. She wasn't a chef, and she rarely had to cook. Hua Jinyao knew all this, but he could still look forward to her cooking with a calm face. Aren't you afraid that the food I cook will poison you to death? To die under a peony, I'd be a romantic even as a ghost. Not to mention dying under the delicacies of my wife. They hadn't seen each other for 10 days. This guy was good at being glib. Su Qingsang couldn't help but roll her eyes over the phone. All right. You go stay up with Grandpa and the others. Su Qingsang tightened her clothes. The window was a little windy. I'm going back to sleep. No. Hua Jinyao looked at the time. Talk with me for another 10 minutes. Talk for 10 minutes. What do you want? I just want to hear your voice. Hua Jinyao's voice came to Su Qingsang's ears through the phone. His voice was a little deep, and it rang softly beside her ear. Su Qingsang suddenly didn't feel hot. Far away in the sky, another firework exploded. She thought of the surprise Hua Jinyao prepared for her birthday. Although it was still a short time, she felt like everything happened yesterday. There was another loud bang, and the sky continued to explode with fireworks. Hua Jinyao's voice sounded at the same time. Happy New Year. Su Qingsang smiled. She finally knew why Hua Jinyao asked her to talk for another 10 minutes. The sound of fireworks kept going. Not only on Su Qingsang's side, but she could also faintly hear the sound of firecrackers on Hua Jinyao's side. Happy New Year. After midnight, it was a new year. Qingsang, I really want to see you soon. Me too. Su Qingsang heard the sound of fireworks around her. Several people were setting off fireworks in the square outside the hospital. Qingsang, do you have any wishes for the new year? I didn't come back to spend the new year with you. What do you want as a new year gift? I'll give it to you. Hua Jinyao's voice sounded with the sound of fireworks, but it was still very clear. No need. Su Qingsang shook her head. I don't lack anything. Then you can make a wish. Hua Jinyao said half jokingly and half seriously, what wish do you have? I'll help you fulfill it. Su Qingsang looked at the flying fireworks in the sky and didn't answer Hua Jinyao. Instead, she thought about what wish she had. Her wish was for the people she cared about to be well. She looked at the night sky for a while. She thought, if I really have to fulfill a wish. Chapter 4:15. Su Qingsang hoped to get that answer. It wasn't because she didn't like Xiang Kaiping, nor was it because she wanted to recognize her biological mother or anything else. She just suddenly thought of something after seeing Xiang Kaiping. If Xiang Kaiping had been lonely for more than 20 years, then was her biological mother even more lonely than Xiang Kaiping? Xiang Kaiping sold her house and went to the north to do business. She was resourceful and bold. But they both missed her so much. What about that woman? What about the woman who gave birth to her? Would she be living a bad life in a place she didn't know? Living a bad life. Su Qingsang didn't want to think like that, but she couldn't help it. In the first 20 years, she knew that maternal love was hopeless, so she didn't crave it. But in the past few months, she looked at Xiang Kaiping and had these thoughts. She thought whether she would recognize that woman in the end or not. She wanted to do something for her, to thank her for giving birth to her and bringing her into this world. As for the rest, she would think about it after she found the person. Honey. Hui Jinyao's voice sounded on the other side. Su Qingsang came back to her senses and smiled at the fireworks in the night sky. Hui Jinyao, can you really fulfill my wish? Of course. Hui Jinyao nodded. Even if you want the stars in the sky, I can pick one for you. You're coaxing me again. Su Qingsang didn't want to play along. Yes, I said I want the stars in the sky. Give me a meteorite later. You don't like it? Hui Jinyao sounded a little regretful. Don't underestimate meteorites. Many meteorites have research value. They're more expensive than diamonds. He was talking nonsense with a serious face again. Yes, yes, yes. They're more expensive than diamonds. Don't give me diamonds later. Just buy a few meteorites and put them in a room. Why don't you just open a meteorite museum and exhibit them directly? Isn't that a good idea? Honey, you really know me. Hui Jinyao casually leaned against the wall and looked at the same night sky. His eyes flickered. My dream was to open a museum. To exhibit something that no one else has seen. Over the phone, Hui Jinyao's eyes flashed with loneliness and nostalgia. How did the little boy, who had always wanted to open a museum, disappear? Su Qingsang listened to his nonsense and didn't believe a word of it. She almost lost her temper. What a great dream. Why didn't you become one in the end? Opening a museum is just spending money and not making money. I have to make money to support my wife first. Hui Jinyao. Su Qingsang finally found a loophole. When you were thinking about earning money to support your wife, I wasn't your wife yet, was I? That's right. Although you are not my wife, I had foresight at that time. He knew that he had to save his wife's money first. Look at how smart your husband is. Su Qingsang was amused by him. Hui Jinyao, it's a pity that you weren't invited to the Spring Festival Gala. You're so talkative, it would be a pity if you didn't become a comedian. That's true. They had no taste. How about I tell you next time? Hui Jinyao climbed up the pole, which made Su Qingsang really happy. Sure. In the future, you should learn more. When I go home, you can perform crosstalk for me. Sure. That's a deal. All right. Su Qingsang was defeated by him. It's getting late. Let's rest. Okay. Then go rest. Don't be too tired. If there's anything, call Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning. Hui Jinyao was about to hang up, but he suddenly called her, wife. Yes. I originally booked a ticket for tomorrow and wanted to come over to accompany you. But my great-uncle is coming. Later, my great-aunt will also come over. I might not be able to come to Lin City until after the third day of Chinese New Year. It's okay. You should do your own things. Su Qingsang was very understanding of Hu Jinyao on this point. Say hello to your great-uncle and great-aunt for me. I'll definitely go back next time. I know. My great-uncle is okay. He's easy to talk to, and after he retires, he will almost always be in Rong City. But my great-aunt doesn't come often. When you come back, we should pay her a visit. Hu Jinyao's great-aunt, Hu Yangshou, was a commander and currently served in a military area. She lived with her husband in the military compound for many years and rarely came to Rong City. Okay. Su Qingsang didn't avoid it. Marrying Hu Jinyao meant that she had to accept his large family as relatives. Although she wasn't used to facing relatives at home, she would try her best to get along with them. My great-aunt is a good person. You'll know when you meet her. I trust you. Speaking of this, Su Qingsang also thought of something. By the way, there's something I want to ask you. What? Su Qingsang pursed her lips and thought of something. In the past, on the first day of every year, although I didn't like it, I would still go to the Su family to wish old Master Li and my father a happy new year. Since she moved out of college, she would still go back to the Su family for the new year if she was outside. The year before last, she helped her colleagues on duty. This year, she still had to be on duty on the first day of the year, but she was a little hesitant. Hu Jinyao, I actually don't want to go to the Su family this year. She wasn't angry at Su Qinghui, but she didn't want to see him either. Don't go if you don't want to, Hu Jinyao said quite casually. Just stay in the hospital with Mom these 2 days. If you want to go to the Su family, I'll go with you when I come back. Okay. Su Qingsang didn't object. With Hu Jinyao there, she thought she would be much calmer and calmer. Wife. Listen to me. With me here, don't do anything you don't want to do in the future. Don't see people you don't want to see. It's okay. What a willful thing to say. But living in this world, how could people really do as they pleased? Not to mention anything else, the Su family had raised her. No matter what reason Su Qinghui had for telling the Li family that she was Xiang Caiping's daughter, it was a fact that he had raised her. Now, she hoped that Su Qinghui would one day tell her the answer, tell her who her biological mother was. Really? With me here, I won't let anything happen to you. Don't you trust me? Yes. I trust you. In fact, in the 6 months that she had been with Hu Jinyao, she really hadn't been wronged. It was almost 1:00 in the morning when Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao talked on the phone. The fireworks were all gone, and the surroundings were quiet. Su Qingsang quietly returned to the ward. In the morning, Xiang Caiping woke up earlier than Su Qingsang. She was already awake when Su Qingsang got up. Morning. Su Qingsang quickly got up. Happy New Year. Mom. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Xiang Caiping looked at Su Qingsang and waved at her. Come. This is for you. She took out a red envelope from under her pillow. Happy New Year. Mom, what are you doing? New Year's money. I should have given it to you yesterday, but I forgot. Xiang Caiping said this with a look of self-blame on her face. Thank you, Mom. I'm already so old. I don't need this. But Su Qingsang was very touched. She grew up in the Su family, so she naturally had New Year's money. But how could the annual routine transfer of money compare to this red packet? Don't be so polite. Xiang Caiping smiled. I didn't give you any before, but I'll make it up to you in the future. When I have a grandson, I'll give him New Year's money every year. That's good. Take care of yourself. Let me thank you on his behalf. You. After breakfast, the first person to visit Xiang Kaiping was Suo Hongqin. He was a doctor, so he didn't have to be so particular. The second one to arrive was Shi Mengwan. Su Qingsang didn't expect her to come so early. You child. Why did you come to the hospital on New Year's Eve? Xiang Kaiping rebuked. You could have come back in a few days. Auntie, it's fine. I don't believe in that. As Shi Mengwan spoke, she put down the gift in her hand. I have a good relationship with Qingsang. It's not a taboo. Good boy. They are all good kids. Someone came to visit Xiang Kaiping, and the ward became much livelier. A few doctors who were familiar with Su Qingsang and were also assigned to be on duty had come over to see Xiang Kaiping. In this way, there was a festive atmosphere. Su Qingsang had to be on duty and couldn't stay in the ward all the time. She was happy to have someone to accompany Xiang Kaiping. When it was almost time for dinner, Su Qingsang handed over her work and hurried to the ward. To her surprise, she saw Su Qinghui again. He stood outside the ward, obviously wanting to go in, but for some reason, he stopped there. Dad. No matter how much Su Qingsang criticized Su Qinghui in her heart, she didn't show it on her face. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Su Qinghui said this unnaturally. He cleared his throat and looked in the direction of the ward. My mother is recovering well. After the new year, let the doctor check her again. Then she can be discharged. During this period of time, Su Qingsang and the caregivers had taken good care of Xiang Kaiping. Her recovery was better than the doctor had expected. After leaving the hospital, she only needed to do some rehabilitation. After that, she would slowly return to normal, at least like a normal person. Su Qinghui had just said the word "I" when Su Qingsang interrupted him. Dad. I'm begging you. Don't go in to see my mother. Xiang Kaiping absolutely didn't want to see Su Qinghui on New Year's Eve. That was definitely not a good thing. Su Qinghui's expression was a little ugly. Qingsang, I hope you remember that I am your father. I know you are my father. Su Qingsang nodded. So what? My mother doesn't want to see you. Can you be a little kinder and let my mother go? Can you? Su Qinghui's face turned green. He stared at Su Qingsang for a while and said, I just want to wish her a happy new year. No need. Su Qingsang really didn't think it was necessary. My mother can still have a good new year if she doesn't see you. If she sees you, I'm afraid she won't have a good new year. Chapter 4:16. How was that nonsense? Su Qingsang was speechless at the accusation. That's the truth. Su Qingsang didn't think she was wrong. My mother really doesn't want to see you. So, please. Su Qinghui had a lot of things to do on the first day of the new year. He had to go back to the Su family later, so he took some time to visit Xiang Kaiping. He didn't expect Su Qingsang to be so determined. She wouldn't even let him see Xiang Kaiping. Qingsang, you have no right to make decisions for your mother. Why don't I? I know very well that my mother doesn't want you. You know very well that you're not. Yes, I'm not. I didn't. Su Qingsang interrupted him. Then who did it? Dad, are you sure you want to argue with me in front of my mother's ward on the first day of the new year? Are you sure? Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He looked at the ward. Dad. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui and suddenly said, I don't understand something. Can you explain it to me? Su Qinghui looked at her and didn't say anything. Since you don't love Auntie so much, why don't you divorce her? Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows. Her face, which looked like Su Qinghui's, was a bit confused. If she really didn't like Li Qinchua and couldn't forget Xiang Kaiping, why didn't she divorce him? What nonsense are you talking about? Su Qinghui's expression changed. I think it's nonsense. If you are really in so much pain and suffering, you can divorce Auntie and leave her. With your ability, even without the Li family, I believe you can still make a name for yourself. If you're single today, you're not married. I won't stop you from seeing my mother. But Dad, you're not. You're married. You have a wife and a family. Yet, you came here to see my mother. Don't you think you're too much? Su Qingsang wanted to say that it was too shameless. But the man standing was her father after all. She couldn't say it out loud. You. What do you know? You don't know anything at all. Of course, Su Qinghui believed in his ability. He also believed that even without the Li family, he could still make a name for himself. Yes. I don't understand. Maybe I'm too young. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. I only know that. If it were me, I would never allow Hu Jinyao to have feelings for another woman while we are still married. I didn't. Su Qingsang didn't believe him at all, but he still said, I just want to know how your mother is doing. Ever since Su Peixian's incident, he had been feeling guilty and blamed himself. He did feel some regret, but that emotion was suppressed by him. My mother is doing very well. You don't have to come. Speaking of this, Su Qingsang sighed deeply. Dad, I know it's hard for you to believe me, but I still have to tell you that even if I'm not my mother's biological daughter, I will take good care of her. Don't worry. After saying that, Su Qingsang turned around and went back to the ward to see Kaiping. Su Qinghui looked at Su Qingsang's back. His steps were firm and steady. When she spoke just now, her tone was calm and determined. He knew that what she said was true. His daughter had grown up in a place where he couldn't see her. Su Qinghui looked at Su Qingsang's back as she walked away. Suddenly, he felt even more guilty than he had ever felt for Kaiping. Su Qinghui turned around and slowed down his steps. He looked outside. It was the first day of the new year, and the weather was good. The sun shone on him, making him feel warm. Su Qinghui didn't feel warm, and his face showed a blank expression. When he walked out of the hospital, he saw a familiar figure. Li Qinchua. He didn't know when she came. She stood at the entrance of the hospital from afar and stared at him coldly. Su Qinghui suddenly felt guilty. He stood there and didn't move. There were two people, one at the entrance of the hospital building, and the other at the gate of the hospital wall. They looked at each other across the lawn of the hospital. He saw Li Qinchua curl up the corners of her mouth mockingly. She looked at him coldly and sharply, but also with disappointment and understanding. He thought that Li Qinchua would rush over, question him, and scold him. In the end, she didn't. She just looked at him, then turned around, got in the car, and drove away. Su Qinghui raised his foot, but in the end, he stopped. The sunshine of the new year suddenly became a little dazzling. The next day, Su Qingsang made an appointment with a few doctors to visit the homes of a few hospital leaders. Then, she went to Shi Mingwan's house. As for the Su family, she planned to visit them on the third day of the new year. Hu Jinyao would come back on the third day, but she didn't know when he would arrive. If he came back in the afternoon, then she would go to the Su family alone. When Su Qingsang saw Hu Jinyao in the ward, she was shocked. Why are you back? Yes. Hu Jinyao nodded with a smile. What's wrong? Are you unhappy? Su Qingsang shook her head. Suddenly, She took 2 steps forward and hugged Hu Jinyao. You're so bad. I thought you wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. I missed you, so I came back early. Those social engagements were really boring. Especially this year, Hui Yangyuan came. God knew how many people came to visit him for the new year. He didn't have the patience for these things. After flying to his great-aunt's house early in the morning, he had lunch and directly booked a plane ticket to Lin City. He hugged her a little tightly. They had been separated for more than 10 days. He really missed her. Su Qingsang felt the same. Smelling the familiar scent on his body, she inexplicably had an urge to cry. Her eyes were red, and the tip of her nose was sour. It didn't matter that she had spent the new year alone in the past, but this year, because of Hu Jinyao, she felt that she missed him very much and wanted him to be by her side. I missed you too. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes and suppressed her excitement. She rubbed her face in Hu Jinyao's arms. Hu Jinyao held her up, lowered his head, and kissed the top of her head. Su Qingsang was still feeling affectionate, but she instantly came back to herself when she heard the laughter next to her. Only then did she realize that she was in the ward. Not only was Xiang Kaiping in the ward, but little Yu was also in the ward. Her face immediately turned red, and she quickly moved away from Hu Jinyao's arms with a beautiful blush on her face. She glared at Hu Jinyao. Her gaze looked fierce, but in fact, it was not lethal at all. Hu Jinyao even pulled her back into his arms. Mom. He brought Su Qingsang to the bedside. Happy New Year. Good, good. Xiang Kaiping was really happy to see her son-in-law. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Mom. Hu Jinyao turned around to pick up the gifts on the ground that he had put down because he saw Su Qingsang. I brought you some things. These will be useful in the future. Su Qingsang looked at the pile of gift boxes and packaging. She was a little touched by Hu Jinyao's kindness. He knew that Xiang Kaiping was not her biological mother, but he still did this. It was really rare. You child. Look at you. It's good that you're back. Why did you buy me things? Xiang Kaiping said with some blame. She had saved some money in her early years. She really didn't want her daughter and son-in-law to spend too much on her. Mom, just keep them. These are all good things. They are all internal supplies. Ordinary people can't buy them even if they want to. Hu Jinyao looked indifferent. I've asked the doctor. These are good for your recovery. Xiang Kaiping knew that this son-in-law was capable, and that these things were nothing to him, but she was very touched by his kindness. She didn't refuse anymore and asked Su Qingsang to put the things away. In her heart, she decided that after she was discharged from the hospital, she must recover as soon as possible. She couldn't be a burden to Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang. With Hu Jinyao around, Xiang Kaiping was much more energetic. She pulled Hu Jinyao and talked for a long time. Hu Jinyao was not impatient. He accompanied Xiang Kaiping patiently and listened to her ramble for a long time. In the end, little Yu winked at Xiang Kaiping, and she remembered. She hadn't seen her daughter and son-in-law for more than 10 days. Okay. Don't worry about me, an old woman. Xiang Kaiping pretended to be annoyed and said, go back. Go do what you need to do. The young couple hasn't seen each other for more than 10 days. If you want to be tired of each other, go do it. Mom. Su Qingsang blushed. What are you talking about? Did I say something wrong? Mom. I'll accompany you today. I don't want you to accompany me. I have little Yu. Hurry up and go. Xiang Kaiping waved her hand. The noise is giving me a headache. Okay. Hua Jinyao didn't know how to be polite at all. He put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist and said, "Then I'll take Qingsang back first. Go. Be careful on the road." Su Qingsang couldn't help but reach out to pinch Hua Jinyao's arm. Unfortunately, his arm was too strong, and she couldn't pinch it. As soon as they got home, Hua Jinyao pulled Su Qingsang into his arms, turned around, and pressed her against the door. He lowered his head and kissed her deeply. Su Qingsang didn't expect him to be so impatient. She couldn't help but raise her hands to push him. However, her hands were easily restrained by Hua Jinyao behind her. He carried her and went straight to the room. Their lips didn't separate for a moment. Seeing that her clothes were taken off one by one, Su Qingsang was a little anxious. You haven't showered yet. I'll shower later." Hua Jinyao didn't give her a chance to refuse. He easily pressed her down on the bed and reached out to grab her feet. "What are you doing?" Su Qingsang was frightened by him. He had his back to her, and she couldn't see his movements clearly for a moment. However, she suddenly felt something cold on her feet. There seemed to be some kind of metal buckle on her feet. Hua Jinyao stepped back with a naughty smile on his face. He raised her feet for her to see. "Does it look good?" It was a very thin but very delicate anklet. It was made of platinum, and there were small leaves on it. The shape of the leaves was very delicate, and there was a small bell in the middle of the chain. Su Qingsang could almost hear the bell ring as soon as her feet moved. A New Year's gift." Hua Jinyao's hand gently touched the small bell on the anklet. "Do you like it?" Su Qingsang's feet were very white, and the anklet made her anklet look even more beautiful and delicate. "We doctors are not allowed to wear jewelry," Su Qingsang said dryly. However, Hua Jinyao took the opportunity to pull her feet down and easily pressed them on her body. His feet wrapped around hers. "It's okay. We only wear it at home." As he spoke, he put his face close to her ear and lowered his voice, which sounded especially magnetic. "Only in bed." Su Qingsang felt heat from her ankles to the top of her head. She bit her lip and looked at him angrily. What are you thinking about in your head?" "I'm thinking about you." Hua Jinyao pinched her chin as he spoke. "Can I be thinking about someone else?" Who knows?" Her mind was full of improper thoughts. Thinking of this, she gently pushed him away. "Go down." As expected, Hua Jinyao went down. Su Qingsang blinked. She didn't seem to have used so much strength just now, did she? However, Hua Jinyao came back very quickly. He was holding another set of underwear that she had bought in Japan. "I've already given you my New Year's gift. Now, it's your turn to give me your New Year's gift." "I don't want it. Once was enough." Did he want to do it again? Su Qingsang wanted to hide, but how could she hide from Hua Jinyao? Soon, Su Qingsang, who was dressed as a bunny girl, was successfully captured by Hua Jinyao in his arms. That night, apart from her own voice and Hua Jinyao's voice, Su Qingsang could only hear the sound of the anklet on her ankle. It kept ringing, ringing, ringing. On the third day of the new year, the weather was not as sunny as the previous 2 days. It was a little gloomy. When Su Qingsang got up in the morning, she was a little embarrassed when she thought of the nonsense she had with Hua Jinyao the day before. Hua Jinyao had endured it for too long these days, hadn't he? He was so heavy-handed. Not at all. Su Qingsang patted her face and quickly calmed herself down. She still had a task today. She got up and told Hua Jinyao that she was going to visit the Su family today. Hua Jinyao didn't object. "Okay. Anyway, I've prepared the gift. Let's go directly." Su Qingsang nodded. She really wasn't very enthusiastic about going to the Su family. Seeing this, Hua Jinyao rubbed her head and messed up her hair. If you really don't want to go, don't go. It's okay. How can I not go? Su Qingsang blinked. It's okay. We'll come back soon. Since Hua Jinyao said that he had prepared the gift, Su Qingsang naturally believed him. When they arrived at the Su family, old Master Li had already gotten up and was playing chess with Su Yusin. Su Chenghui and Li Qinchue hadn't gotten up yet. Seeing Hua Jinyao, old Master Li was a little emotional. This outstanding young man could be said to be a member of his family, but he didn't marry Su Peixian. Instead, he married Su Qingsang. It would be a lie to say that he didn't regret it. However, everything had its own fate. It couldn't be forced. Old Master, Happy New Year. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao wished Old Master Li and Su Yusin each other Happy New Year. Old Master Li looked at Hua Jinyao. You're here at the right time. Come and play chess with me. Yusin, go upstairs and call your father down. Chapter 4:17. In fact, the atmosphere at home had been a little gloomy for the past 2 days. Perhaps it was because Su Peixian wasn't in the country. Li Qinchue's expression had been ugly the whole time. She didn't look like she was celebrating the new year. Instead, she looked like someone owed her money. Even old Master Li could see that something was wrong with her. However, since Li Qinchue didn't say anything, old Master Li couldn't say anything. Young people had their own things to do. As parents, it was not appropriate for them to interfere too much. Old Master Li had been worried about Li Qinchue for a long time. He was getting on in years and really didn't want to worry about his children anymore. Li Qinchue had a headache early in the morning. She hid in her room and was unwilling to go out. In the morning, 2 families came to pay their New Year's greetings. The other party's status was lower than the Su family's, so she didn't need to entertain them much. After seeing them off, she went back to sleep. However, when she saw Su Qinghui, she looked a little annoyed. She was annoyed to see Su Qinghui. No, not annoyed. His heart was cold. Her heart was so cold that she didn't want to be with this man anymore. Su Qinghui had just come out of the bathroom. When he saw Li Qinchue, he was stunned for a moment. Recently, the relationship between the two of them had been particularly tense. Ever since Li Qinchue bumped into him at the hospital on the first day of the new year, Li Qinchue hadn't said a word to him. It was supposed to be the new year, a lively time, but the two of them didn't say a word at home. Even when there were guests in the house, Li Qinchue could still smile at them, but when it came to him, she immediately looked at him coldly. At night, the two of them slept on one side of the bed. However, for the past 2 days, Li Qinchue had taken out a blanket and slept on the other side of the bed. Just like now, when she returned to her room to rest, she saw that his gaze was fixed on the bed. She turned around and walked in the other direction. There was a custom-made Italian chaise longue in the room. Li Qinchue took a blanket from the closet and laid on it, planning to take another nap. Before he could fall asleep, he heard the sound of a car outside the courtyard. She was a little annoyed. That was how it was during the new year. There were a lot of people who came to visit, and there was no time for peace. In the past, she didn't feel tired dealing with these people and things. Not long after, Su Yusin came up. Mom. Dad. Su Yusin looked at his parents in the room and sighed deeply in his heart. No one didn't want their family to be harmonious, and no one didn't want their parents to love each other. But at some point, Su Yusin knew that this was just an extravagant hope. Big sister, brother-in-law is here. Jinrun Su Pei was not in the country, so she naturally referred to Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao. Li Qinshue had already woken up when Su Yusin entered the room. She glanced at Su Qinghui and found that he was sitting still. She smiled sarcastically. "What? Your most precious daughter is here to pay you a New Year's visit. Aren't you going to hurry downstairs and entertain her?" Su Qinghui didn't look too good. Li Qinshue glanced at Su Yusin and said, "I have a headache. I want to sleep a little longer." After saying this, she lay down again. Su Yusin felt a little helpless and couldn't help but look at Su Qinghui. No matter how much he didn't want to see Su Qingsang, he had to go downstairs. Downstairs, Hu Jinyao and Old Master Li were playing chess. Su Qingsang was sitting next to them and watching. She didn't know much about chess, but she could see that the game was in a stalemate. However, seeing Old Master Li frowning and thinking carefully, while Hu Jinyao seemed to be unconcerned, Su Qingsang felt that Hu Jinyao seemed to be more relaxed. When she saw Su Qinghui again, Su Qingsang's feelings were very complicated. In her heart, Su Qinghui was obviously a scumbag, but such a scumbag was her father. Dad. Dad. Hu Jinyao also stopped playing chess and stood up to pay a New Year's visit to Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui nodded slightly, not showing much enthusiasm on his face. Su Qingsang wasn't surprised by his attitude at all. If Su Qinghui was warm and considerate to her one day, it would really be a strange thing. Hu Jinyao went back to play chess with Old Master Li. After a few rounds, Old Master Li admitted defeat. The new generation excels the old. The younger generation really surpasses the older one. Old Master Li's face was full of admiration. He really appreciated Hu Jinyao as a young man. "You flatter me, old master." Hu Jinyao smiled faintly. "Speaking of which, my grandfather loves to play chess. I just play with him a lot." Hu Jinyao was playing chess with Old Master Li, while Su Yusin was chatting with Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui, on the other hand, became the extra one. He didn't seem to care. No one knew what he was thinking, but he was a little lost in thought. When it was almost lunchtime, Li Qinshue came downstairs. She had slept, and her complexion was a little better. Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang stood up to pay a New Year's visit to her. Li Qinshue's reaction was very cold. Su Qingsang had long been used to Li Qinshue's attitude, so she wasn't sad. Su Yusin looked at Su Qingsang, his eyes a little apologetic. Su Qingsang smiled at him, not taking it seriously. Li Qinshue noticed her son's gaze, and the expression on her face became more and more unpleasant. Her husband was on Su Qingsang's side, and now even her son was on Su Qingsang's side. She felt that there was a lump in her heart. She couldn't go up or down. This kind of feeling was so uncomfortable that she left before the others finished eating. Old Master Li felt helpless about his daughter's increasingly abnormal behavior. Fortunately, Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang didn't care about this matter. After all, it wasn't someone they cared about, so their attitude didn't matter. After eating, Su Qingsang was going to leave. However, when she saw Su Qinghui, she couldn't help but want to ask who her biological mother was. Hu Jinyao seemed to know what she was thinking. He held her hand and said, "I'll go." Su Qingsang bit her lip and looked at Hu Jinyao in surprise. "Hu Jinyao. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing." After saying this, Hu Jinyao asked Su Qingsang to accompany Old Master Li and Su Yusin to chat. He used business as an excuse to call Su Qinghui into the study. Su Qinghui didn't understand what business it was that needed to be discussed on such a big day like the New Year. However, Hu Jinyao had gone to Rome City before, so there might be a new project or something else. The two of them entered the study, and the servant left after serving 2 cups of tea. Su Qinghui looked at Hu Jinyao, waiting for him to take the initiative to speak. Hu Jinyao picked up the tea in front of him and took a sip, then clicked his tongue and said, "Isn't this Longjing tea before the rain? It's a bit of a waste to make it like this." Su Qinghui didn't speak. Old Masterly liked tea, so he asked someone to make some. As for how to make it, he actually didn't like tea very much, and he usually didn't pay much attention to it. However, when Old Masterly was free, he would make his own tea. "You just said that business, it's not business." Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qinghui. He could roughly tell that Su Qinghui had been in a strange state recently. "Actually, I have something personal to tell you." You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.